Have you been to the Hanging Gardens of Babylon?
No.
No, I haven't.
I didn't know they actually existed.
Well,
they're Hanging Gardens.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, where do they hang?
Babylon.
Calling all emos, computer programmers and blokes called Malcolm who still live with their mum.
Crikey, there must be more to life than this.
It's the revolutionary virtual human interface you can access without ever leaving your bedroom.
And what were you up to the other night? That's what I'd like to know.
How cool is that?
Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. The two mics, Parry and Graham, on Talk Sport.
Farmers are now enlisting drones to do the job of a sheepdog. And the drones will, in fact, believe it or not, be shaped like sheepdogs. So they'll be
flying sheepdogs.
They'll be flying sheepdogs.
Won't that scare the hell out of the sheep?
No. I went into Asda to get a clothes horse.
Please do not mention horizontal refreshment. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. We are standing at what can only be described as the apex of another grand moment in history. Here's Mr. Porky Parry to explain it to you. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Mike. Yes, another general election.
Yeah, I know.
Be absolutely fabbo. I love
fabbo?
I love general elections. Because
funnily enough, that's what David Dimbleby was saying a few hours ago.
Is that right?
Yeah, the absolute fabbo.
Yeah, absolutely fabbo, that's
super.
right, yeah.
Can't wait.
No, it's brilliant, isn't it? Because I knew it was going to happen. I told you 5 weeks ago it was going to happen.
Well, you say that, but
There's
no record of you telling me anything. I mean, I don't have any audio record. The boys can't find any.
I knew somebody who's a Labour Party researcher.
You say that, but I have no record of you speaking about the general election that was coming 5 weeks ago.
I did, and they told me we're on war footing. You know, the war room's up and active and all that. They think an election is coming.
Well, isn't that because of the North Korean situation?
No, it's happening because although Mrs May said half a dozen times, I will not be seeking, a general election, and that would be
she was quite unequivocal about that.
Yeah. She said that would be,
nothing before 2020.
She said nothing before 2020. She said because that would be actually taking an opportunity which is, wicked in the circumstances that I'm here to steer the country. But now, of course, she can't steer the country unless she gets herself a decent majority. It'll just come to a grinding halt, she says.
Well, why don't we put everything down on the record, because it's better now to keep records rather than to have you claim things which we can't otherwise back up.
Yeah.
So what I can say is that at 1:06 on April the 17th,
yes,
you can now make your prediction of what's going to happen in the general election, and then we can record it, and then we can play it back when you get it right.
In the general election, I think the Tories will probably have a majority of about 90 seats.
90 seats?
Yeah, I would say it's about 90, because when you look at all the other sort of coalition-type parties that exist in the world this day, I would say it'd be about that.
Unfortunately, there's nobody in the gallery paying any attention whatsoever to what you've said.
Well, it's on record.
So
I've said it on audio.
I would have signalled to them, would you mind...
noting this?
You just said, no, don't get me wrong, I am listening. And you said 80 seats. So there's already 10 out from what you said.
No, I said 90.
I know you did.
Yeah, so
this is what we have to put up with.
Why are they saying 80?
This is what we have to put up with.
Well,
there's a guy at the back there who said, oh, no, I was definitely listening.
No, it was 90.
I know you said 90.
Listening, was he?
I know.
What I like on election night is that when I worked for the Express mostly when elections were going on. And they, of course, were a very sort of pro-Tory, pro-Mrs Thatcher paper.
Yeah.
And, of course, she was winning all the elections
They
in
were
those
until
days.
I started working there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So she was winning all the elections in those days. So what used to happen was... the minute that, the sort of exit poll came through, Tories to win by 90, the editor, instead of saying, right, OK, let's pull the paper apart, put it back together again, and then we'll and update the third edition, update the fourth edition, update the fifth edition, the editor would say, right, that's it. Where's my driver? I'm off.
Yeah.
And he was off to Smith Square, which is the Tory Party HQ.
To celebrate.
Yeah, just around the corner from Westminster. Yeah. And he would go and glad hand with people like Cecil Parkinson.
Norman Tebbit,
all these sort of, big beasts in the jungle for the Tories. Yes. And he didn't really care too much about what happened to the paper back in Fleet Street. It made itself up.
Well, because...
people like you and me had to put it together.
Well, that's right. I mean, because that was always the way. And similarly, the night that Tony Blair won in 1997... they all tootled off down to the People's Palace.
Oh, yeah, of course,
nobody could quite work out why the paper got better and better and better as the night went on.
No, that's right.
Because fewer and fewer senior executives were actually there to interfere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. That was.
I actually changed one of the headlines from the guy who was left.
Yes.
The sort of number 3 in charge of the paper.
Yes.
Who came up with this page 1 that just said Triumph.
And
I said, why don't you just put Honda? I said, it's the name of a car. I said, it doesn't work. It's rubbish. Make it something a bit more kind of meaningful.
So what did you change it to?
I can't remember, but it was much better.
Well, what was it?
I can't remember.
You can't remember?
I can't remember.
But it was better. Well, you can't remember this moment of triumph on the night of an election.
Well, it wasn't a moment of triumph. That was my point.
Yeah,
but I said, don't make it the name of a motorcycle or the name of a car.
So what did you put in its place?
I think it was something like Wipeout or something. It was much better.
Well, it was so good that you can't remember.
Well, no, because I used to write great headlines every day.
I tell you what, on the night of Blair's first election, right, this is how good the Labour Party were at seizing the whole of the British establishment, British government, everything, right? What happened was the editor. I was working at the Press Association, and I was the big cheese, you know.
Big cheese.
Yeah, and over the
you weren't actually, were you?
Over the previous 3 years,
you weren't in charge of the PA, were you?
I was on a day-to-day basis. I was in charge of the PA.
You weren't in charge of it. What was the name? What was your job title?
Me, executive editor, which meant I ran everything.
It meant you weren't the editor.
So anyway, what happened was, on a day-to-day basis, you know, you'd work around things, and then all of a sudden I'd get introduced to this guy. Oh, this guy's a political genius, you know. And this was from the guy who was like the chief executive editor-in-chief, you know what I mean?
Right.
Who had the wool pulled over his eyes by all these political journalists who kept turning up and saying, oh, yes, I'm very middle of the road, you know, oh, yes, well, you know, you can see the way the political landscape's going to shape out.
People talk a lot of Cobleros, don't they?
Yeah, of course they do. So anyway, he then started appointing a few of his mates from... from the Commons, from the gallery, and the the various sort of political offices. And all of a sudden, we had 6 or 8 political writers, including sketch writers, gallery and all that. And on the night that the election took place and the Coventry result came in, which apparently was the crucial one, and it went to Labour by a massive landslide, the whole of our political team were jumping up and down, punching the air. Yeah. You're supposed to be neutral. Yeah. You're supposed to be completely neutral.
That's not a good look.
No, it was all, come on, Tony, all this kind of stuff, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? It's supposed to be neutral. You lot, when we appointed you, said you were all middle of the road, and they were fanatical Labour Party supporters.
Well, it was New Labour as well, wasn't it?
It was New Labour, and then what happened was, about sort of 6 o'clock the next morning, I said, well, OK, guys, thanks very much, all done a great job, didn't realise you're quite so passionately supportive. No, we're not. We're completely neutral.
Very neutral, yes.
Yeah, I said, oh, well, you can all go home now. And they said, are you mad?
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to miss Tony's entrance to Downing Street?
Yeah, which was all, of course, pre-arranged
Exactly.
and completely choreographed.
Yeah, like thousands of people were sent down to wave Union Jack flags in Downing Street.
And everyone went, isn't this great? Somebody new in Downing Street, somebody young in Downing Street.
Look at this natural reaction to this great young leader.
Yeah,
it was,
I mean, I was having a couple of, shall we say, cocktails earlier on today.
Yes.
With somebody from the Fleet Street Arena. We were talking about things like titles such as emeritus editor and things like that.
Yes.
And he was recounting once something that was once said by a very famous Australian proprietor.
Right.
When asked what that meant,
yes,
he said, it means he's not the editor.
That's right, yeah.
So that's basically, anything that includes another word, like executive editor,
yes, that's right,
or assistant editor,
yes,
or associate editor,
yes,
or editor emeritus.
That's right.
It means you're not in charge.
It means you're not in charge,
basically.
Yeah.
So, how about this from Andy?
Yeah.
He says, is Porky actually going loopy? The way he stopped talking about North Korea mid-flow to then rant about Leicester was indeed bonkers.
No, it wasn't. No, it's not bonkers at all. Don't worry.
Steve the cabbie says, Porky's prediction means the Tories are doomed yet again.
No, I don't think they are, actually. I think it'd be impossible for them to lose this election because already...
Well, you say that.
Already, Jeremy Corbyn has made a couple of statements which seem to be so completely out of tune with the way the world's thinking, the way this country's thinking, the world's thinking. But anyway, look, we'll have to see. I think they're very exciting elections. I love them because all parties have a wobble on the way. Like Gordon Brown did with the lady,
and to be fair,
who he called a bigot.
The bigot, yes, that bigoted woman.
Yeah,
get her out of the way. The great thing as well, of course, is that the pollsters have got it so wrong recently.
Yes.
They got it wrong on Brexit. They got it wrong on the last general election. They got it wrong on Trump. That whatever, despite the fact that they're saying it will be a wipeout for the Tories.
Yeah, that's right. Might not be.
They might be completely wrong.
Yeah, for all we know.
My sense is they're not going to be wrong.
No,
but we shall see.
It might be a huge silent majority in favour of Jeremy Corbyn. We could wake up on June the 9th and find that Comrade Corbyn is running the world.
I'd be very surprised. The thing that has surprised me the most, though, in the past sort of few hours, is all these people going on about Tim Farron and what a brilliant man he is, and that he's the only.
Why is that?
Well, because he's the only place supposedly for Remainers, people who want to stay in the European Union, to go. So lots of people are saying, well, of course, the Lib Dems are going to get a massive boost because of Mr. Farron, who we had on our show, our award-winning show,
yes, we did,
about the American election, where he came on and his great plan.
Let's have a new referendum.
His great new plan was let's have another referendum.
Yeah,
what I didn't know about him is he's a mad Christian, apparently, and he doesn't like to talk about homosexuality, because I watched him on Channel 4 last night, and they asked him the question again for the fourth time, which he refused to answer, is homosexuality a sin?
Yes.
And he couldn't answer answer it.
Yes.
He could not answer the question.
And was I listening to the UKIP boss today? And is he like
that guy, Paul Nuttall?
Is he a mad scouser?
Should he not have disappeared off the face of the earth when he pretended to have been at Hillsborough?
Absolutely.
He pretended he was at Hillsborough.
Absolutely.
He wasn't there. Why is he even still being spoken to?
I don't think he pretended. I think he said that he had a close friend relative who died at Hillsborough.
Whatever.
But, I mean,
he made some rubbish up that wasn't true.
Well, let's put it this way. He got some facts about the most sensitive, an appalling tragedy in Britain for the last 100 years. He got some facts about it completely wrong, which suited his position, it was appalling.
But he keeps getting hired to go on Question Time.
Yeah,
he keeps, when he was running in the Stoke by-election, which he didn't win,
that's right.
he was asked questions about whether, in fact, he lived there.
Yes.
He couldn't seem to answer those. I mean, the guy seems about as dodgy as they come.
Dodgy.
And yet, he keeps being quoted by the news organisation. Very strange, very bizarre. Anyway, so lots to talk about. We will be doing a news election special, I'm sure. Come the night of the...
we might do a really long one. We might do the overnight, then we might come back the next day and sum it all up, you know what I mean?
Well, sort of Dimbleby style.
Dimbleby style, I like that. I like the word Dimbleby.
Yeah. You don't go to sleep, basically. Well, you don't sleep anyway.
Dimbleby.
But you have to be careful calm down. You have to be careful you don't lose the plot.
Which Dimbleby are we talking about?
We're not talking about Jonathan, are we?
What are we talking about?
We're talking about David Dimbleby.
Aren't we talking about Richard Dimbleby?
No, Richard Dimbleby. No, he's dead.
He was their father.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but
we're talking about David Dimbleby, who does the election show, which starts at 10 o'clock at night and goes all the way through until 3 o'clock the next afternoon.
But his father set the blueprint for that show. Richard Dimbleby. He did.
Rubbish.
He did.
Rubbish.
No. You don't know your political broadcasting history. You don't.
All right. Well, you can teach me
Not sure
about
we can trust you with a programme like that.
Yeah, well, that's why we won an award, because of me, not because of you. This is Talk Sport.
In the general election,
yes.
I think the Tories will probably have a majority of about 90 seats.
The Two Mics, simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio.
The Two Mics, general election special on Talk Sport. Mike Parry's waistline, gain. Mike Graham's hairline, loss.
Do you recognise that? The old general election stab?
The general election stab, yes.
Yes. For a couple of years ago. I don't recognise the bit about my hairline receding, though.
Oh, really?
My hairline hasn't receded in 2 years.
Oh, I think it has a bit.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
I think so. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
I'm not worried about it, but I certainly would not take your judgment of it either, by the way.
No.
Got a lot of tweets and texts coming in, by the way. Don't forget you can tweet us at the Two Mics.
Yes.
At Mike Parry 8 and at IROMG.
Yeah.
Johnny says, do you think MG the Porky Boy will ever let you get a word in? Hashtag me.
No.
Well, that's what people know about you, see.
I don't know what they're talking about.
Well,
honestly.
I know you don't, because you don't care what anybody else says.
They need to listen a bit more carefully,
Do you think?
Yes, Now, on the election night, of course, and already today, some political careers have been smashed. And
already today?
Yeah.
Well,
you know that some people are going to come out of this election as yesterday's men, never to be today's men again.
Well, there's already a couple of MPs who said they're not going to stand.
Well, that's right, absolutely. So what I was going to say to you was that the same thing's going to happen to Leicester City Football Club. Because Leicester City Football Club started the day today as a contender for a place in the semi-finals of the Champions League. And tonight, they are no longer a contender. They are now a mid-table Premier League club, which is what they will be for the next 10 years,
when Everton
if
beat
they
them,
don't start flirting with relegation.
When Everton beat them the other day, you referred to them as the champions of the Premier League.
Yes.
So they're no longer the champions of the Premier League.
Yes, they are still the champions of the Premier
Just
League.
checking.
But that's only for another 6 games.
Yeah. Well, I did tell you that I thought that Diego Simeone and Atletico Madrid would be too much for them.
Yeah.
You still put out tweets earlier on today saying you thought it was going to be Leicester's night.
Well, that's because I have an inherent sort of pride in the country.
Yeah.
And
there's no much point in saying things for the sake of it, though, is there?
No,
Just to try and gain popularity, even if you know that it's to be wrong.
No, I say it because I feel within myself there's a will there for them to win and we should get behind them. So that's what I was saying.
Even though they had no chance?
Well, they had every chance. They didn't have no chance at all. They had every chance, but it didn't work out for them. Now, what I'm saying is that the 18-month run that Leicester have had, and a most glorious run, and I mean almost unbelievable achievements that they've managed to notch up is now over. But it's all over now.
It's all over now, and it may well be that they never see the like of that again.
Oh, they never will, and I'll tell you why. Because we know clubs before have put in a tremendous burst and spurted to become a great club, and then can't handle it. Blackburn couldn't handle it. Nottingham Forest couldn't handle it. You know, Leicester now can't handle it. Unless you cash in on that moment of glory, like, you know, as clubs like Manchester United and Arsenal, Liverpool and Everton and Manchester City have in the past, you can't handle it. You're not big enough to be a big club. And Leicester are not big enough to be a big club.
But do you not think, and you've alluded to this before, that they had the opportunity to do more in the close season last year? They could have, amongst other things, for example, as you suggested, sack Claudio Ranieri.
Yes.
Even if they hadn't done that, because one of their best players left to go and play Chelsea, they could have signed some more players.
Of course they could have
But they didn't do that.
They didn't do anything like that.
They had plenty of money coming in, and they had plenty of reason to do so, to remain in the top four.
Yes.
But they just didn't let it happen.
That team will now break up. Vardy will go, won't he, in the summer? He's bound to go in the summer because he doesn't want to be playing for a mid-table best team next season.
But the trouble with Vardy is that he's only had, you know, sort of, I would say, maybe 10 great games.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, now whether or not he was not playing as well as he can play because he didn't like the manager, whether he was in some way on strike. You know, he did not have a great season. So, not that many clubs will want him.
They will. And do you know why?
He's the wrong side of 25, isn't he?
He's the wrong side of 25, but he's going to be a lot cheaper this summer than he was last summer. Because last summer he was the centre forward of the Premier League champions.
Well, who do you think is going to sign him?
I think Vardy could be signed by any one of the top 6 clubs. Now, that doesn't mean to say that he's going to be a regular starter for, you know, clubs like Manchester United or Chelsea. No, Chelsea I will accept. I don't think Chelsea will. Chelsea will
Everton could do with him, couldn't
Everton could definitely do with him.
If Lukaku goes.
Everton could definitely do with him. And in fact, when I was weighing this up earlier, I thought Liverpool or Everton could sign Vardy. Vardy could sign for Manchester United. Maybe not City, maybe not Chelsea. But certainly
Liverpool.
Liverpool. Yeah, he'd do a job for a top 6, top 7 club.
I can see him at Liverpool, actually.
Well, I can see him at one of those sort of that size club, you know, because he's got to move on from Leicester. Other players like Drinkwater will move on because they know now that, you know, this incredible run and this dream, almost like floating on a magic carpet, the magic carpet has suddenly hit a burst and it's coming down fast.
It's being hoovered.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
It's being sucked down onto the reality level.
I think you can say the floor has opened up for the magic carpet.
But also, will a lot of those players not think, actually, we've done rather well because we've got a bit of a pay rise thanks to our great success that we had by winning the Premier League and getting into the Champions League.
Yes.
We might just stay where we are and have a relatively easy life.
No, I think that now they've tasted success and they know what it's all about.
But you say that. But
those who are any good will want to move on.
Well, you say that, but don't forget, this is a club where an awful lot of the players did not perform to the best of their ability.
Yes.
We believe because of the fact that they were in some way demonstrating against Claudio Ranieri.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think the best description of it that I ever heard, I think it was Gary Neville who said that they weren't demonstrating against the manager. They were actually naturally reacting to being a different category of player in the new season, i.e. the champions of the Premier League, and never went into the games with the same attitude as they had last season. And you know, they found it very difficult to adjust.
Well, you can say that, but I don't think people will believe it, because if you look at the contrast in the way that they've been playing for the last, say, half a dozen games since Ranieri left, there was clearly something going on, which was preventing them playing in that way.
Well, that's why I said, and I stand by it, they should have got rid. If they're not big enough to be a big club because they don't think like a big club, and a big club would have said, wow, Claudio Ranieri's got us here, we're Premier League champions, but I'm not sure how much further he can take us. We'll go and get a continental coach now, another continental coach, and we will move on from here. But they haven't built on it. They've gone backwards, and going backwards means that you can't handle success. So success comes along, it smacks you in the face, it's a beautiful surprise, it kisses you on the cheek, it flirts with you, it tantalises you, and then you can't handle it and it disappears.
Yes. Matt says this, Porky has started the show talking sensibly and intelligently. Surely it won't last much longer, it's so out of character.
That is a bit harsh, isn't it?
I think so. There's nothing worse than a sort of a compliment paid to you in an underhand way.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And 50 Ink Tattoo says, Corbyn's bringing on another recession. Hashtag Porky Jinx. I'm not sure what that means.
No, I'm not sure. I'll tell you what's going to bore me to death in the next 7 weeks. You're going to get the same arguments, you know, sort of trundled out every day by different people about what's going to happen next, what's going to happen in the election. How boring is all that? My advice would be to stick with the radio. Stick listening to the two mics, because we promise we will not bore you to death with the election, but we will comprehensively cover it for you on the night it happens.
I mean, certainly if you look at the newspapers this morning, you would think that something absolutely colossal has been going on. May heads for election landslide as the Times. Telegraph has wiped out the whole of their front page. May's bolt from the Blue. And the Mirror says the lady is for turning.
That's right.
Blue murder on the Sun. Even the Daily Star's put it on the front.
That's right. The Guardian, May, give me my mandate. Why is the Daily Star, which is a traditional red top, suddenly decided to go black top because an election's been announced?
Idea. Absolutely no idea. It doesn't work. It looks like a mistake, doesn't it?
It looks like I don't know. It looks different. It looks like some sort of comic or something. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
Snap, cackle and pop is their headline, which makes no sense at all. But luckily,
it doesn't.
What you will...
How do they justify that?
That doesn't mean anything, does it?
Theresa May called a snap general election, so they're trying to make that snap cackle and pop.
What's cackle, though?
I've no idea. No, it doesn't make sense, that one. Sorry. Don't like that one.
Luckily for those fans of the Daily Star and that sort of journalism, you turn into page 3 and they've still got a picture of a topless woman.
Well, I'm not interested in that. This is a family show. Now, let me tell you this.
How about this? Hang on. From R. Stoddard. How much gerrymandering is Porky expecting in the upcoming election? He's not sent out as an Ask Porky.
Quite a lot. But listen here, let me tell you this very quickly. How many times was Mrs. May asked, are you going to have a general election? She said no on these occasions.
She said it was bad for Britain.
Yes, bad for Britain. She said June the 30th, July the 12th, August 30th, September 4th, October 2nd, October 4th, November 4th, March 7th. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times she said there won't be an election.
She should be signing up with Mike Parry a book of lies, shouldn't she?
No, not at all. What she should...
When you get asked to tell the truth about something, you behave in a similar way.
No, that's absolutely untrue. The point is that if you don't respond to changing events, you will get stuck in the quicksand.
So it's okay to make a U-turn?
Hey?
So it's okay to make a U-turn in your
view?
It's
okay to respond to changing circumstances and situations, which is where she found herself.
Sure.
This is interesting. Look, on page 8 of the Daily Mail, Dimbleby. TV debates could go on without the Prime Minister.
Is that Richard Dimbleby?
Well, I think this is, it'll be David, won't it?
Yeah, the one that's alive.
Veteran BBC presenter David Dimbleby last night warned Theresa May she was taking a perilous risk after she ruled out taking part in televised election debates. I think they're rubbish.
They showed the ones from last time, right? And there were so many people up there. It's not a debate. They each get 30 seconds to say something. Yeah, it's not a proper debate.
It's like some dreadful quiz show, isn't it? Now, what's your view of this? What's your view of this? They're not actually debating.
Can you give us an answer in 30 seconds? I mean, my favourite, probably, I would say, and as you know, I'm not against Nicola Sturgeon. In fact, I know quite well, I quite like her. Yeah. But, I mean, for her to say that Theresa May is being opportunistic by announcing this is rather pot and kettle, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, Nicola Sturgeon spent the entire last 4 years being opportunistic every chance she gets.
That's right. It certainly is.
I say that at the risk of incurring the wrath of all the SNP people who listen to this show. However, we will be getting lots of your views. You can tweet them at the two mics, at Mike Parry 8, at IROMG. Dan says this: I noticed Mike Parry went through the full list of big clubs and missed Spurs. When was the last time Everton won 7 in a row?
No, Spurs, I'm sorry.
I think he did mention Spurs.
Oversight, they do mention. By the way, you know a load of these old political deadbeats are going to try and come back. Yeah. Vince Cable.
Oh, God. The Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to try and make a return.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
What a plank. This is Talk Sport.
Plank. Talk Sport on DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM. The enduring home of football.
It's modern radio, only better.
Talk Sport.
Crazy, awesome. Crazy, awesome. Never stop and they never die. They just keep on pumping how they multiply. Crazy horses, will they never halt? If they keep on moving, then it's all our fault.
Talk Sport. I've got a tweet here from Andy who says, is this the trash headline MG commissioned when he commandeered the Mirror editor's office? And he says it looks like MG sold out, I think is what he means, but it's that picture there of Tony Blair holding the Mirror, and it says, I will win it for Mirror readers. Unfortunately, Andy, as much as your poison is a very good idea, I was actually working for the Express when they got elected. So that wasn't the paper that I was involved with. No, it was only later on that I was working for them.
There is a great opportunity for the political barons barons of my home city of Chester.
The political barons?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you
In
know
fact,
what?
did I not see, was it not the local MP from Chester who put the stuff out that I retweeted about the mock crucifixion that went on up there?
I think it was.
Easter weekend.
Yeah, that's
What's his name? The local MP?
Chris Matheson.
That's him, yeah.
Is the now he's Labour, right? But he holds the narrowest majority of just 93 votes of any Labour seat in this country. Against any other party. Now, my thinking is, as I have a lot of influence in that part of the world, don't you think it'd be wise for all political parties concerned to get
Chester.
on? Yeah, to get on the blower to me, pretty damn
to
quick.
see whether you're going to endorse anything.
Well, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
I mean,
couldn't my endorsement of a candidate there be vital?
No.
Hey?
I don't think it can be.
I think
you may be barking up the wrong tree. More disturbingly, I was watching your Twitter feed earlier on today.
Oh, yes.
When you put out a tweet which suggested that many people were asking you to run for office.
Well...
And I don't know quite where that came from, because I haven't seen more than about one person who I'm pretty sure is clinically insane asking you to run for any kind of democratic
I think you'll find.
post.
I think you'll find it's all part of the mantra which is built up over the years we've worked together, which goes like, vote Porky, vote often.
Yes.
And I think people
you can't vote more than once in most general elections.
Well, you know where that comes from? It comes from the days of the rotten boroughs.
No, it comes from the days of winners and losers when you used to try and gerrymander the result.
Ah, yes, but I nicked it from the sort of 19th century when the rotten boroughs were so rotten that actually you could just move a load of people who worked for you on the land, just move them around a few constituencies and get them all to vote for you all the time.
Right.
And if they
It's your kind of election, that,
yeah, it is. Yeah, you have to forge a few betting slips, not betting slips, voting slips. Right. Betting slips would be a good thing, wouldn't they? Then you could.
Have you cashed in your betting slip for the Grand National yet?
Yes, I did actually.
Did you pick up the money?
I did indeed.
And have you sent it on to the horse sanctuary?
Yes, I have.
I don't believe you.
Yes, I have.
Where's the evidence?
I don't have to produce evidence to you of my good
you
work.
do. Not for me.
No?
I trust you implicitly.
Yes.
But unfortunately, there are people out there who decided that they should ask for evidence whenever you say that you're donating money.
Well,
because they're not really of the mind to believe you.
It's not something I like to make a lot of.
Is that right?
No, I prefer to do it quietly.
How about this from Nick? He says, I can't wait for that election night special fronted by Mike Parry and Richard Dimbleby via Derek Acora.
Yes, that's right. It will be via Derek Acora. You're absolutely right. All I'm saying is that it was David Dimbleby's father, Richard Dimbleby, who put down the blueprint for those election nights. And anybody who knows anything about the history of political broadcasting, as I do, being a student of it.
They had the swingometer in Richard Dimbleby's day, did they?
Yes, they did.
Sure.
Yes, they did, definitely.
Right.
And that was taken on by Peter Snow, who then, leapt around all over the place. I think he's Jon Snow's uncle, isn't he, or
He's
something?
his brother, isn't he?
No, it's definitely not his brother. He's uncle. He's his uncle.
Are you sure he's not his brother?
I'm certain he's not his brother, honestly. There's a big age difference between them. And
Jon Snow's pretty old, you know.
Jon Snow is getting old now. He's getting up towards 60, but Peter Snow's in his 80s, I think, or something like that. So, so I can assure you that it was Peter Snow, the uncle, who started the swingometer. But all those things are sort of trial and error type thing. Some of them work and some of them don't.
Yeah, but they now got your mate Jeremy Vine jumping about, haven't they, on a map?
Yeah, they have.
Which gets more and more complicated with every broadcast that they do.
I totally agree. They have. Yeah.
Has he never asked you for your input on something like that?
Oh, I've been asked many times to contribute.
By Jeremy Vine?
Well, yes.
To contribute on the election night on the BBC?
Oh, no.
That's what I'm asking you.
No, on all sorts of topical issues in the world of broadcasting.
Yeah, we know all that. I mean,
yes,
we know he's had you on as an expert on.
Well, I've had to turn a lot down because I'm too busy, you see.
Is that right?
Yes. But it's always very kind of them to think of me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem at all. Now then, I tell you what I want to talk to you about. Apart from all that, I want to talk to you about Harry Redknapp, because I'm so delighted that Harry Redknapp, who is a personal friend of ours, we can say that without fear of favour.
I mean, you may say that he's a personal friend of yours. I would say that I know him very, very scantily. I wouldn't call him a friend.
Hang on, we recently went to an exhibition with him and helped promote things.
Yes,
and all that kind of stuff.
I had a very nice chat with him.
And he's
a lovely guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would hesitate to call him a friend because I don't know him that well.
Oh, okay.
I know that you like to call people friends if they've got something to kind of be proud of.
Well, not necessarily. But anyway, the point is, he's back in football. I think that's terrific. And the best thing Birmingham can do to make up for the ridiculous appointment of Gianfranco Zola is just say to Harry now, Harry, if you keep us up, which he will, I'm certain he will.
Hasn't he said that they only need to basically make another 3 points?
Well, they've got 3 games, and I didn't hear him say we only need 3 points.
I think he said only need 3 points.
Well, okay, well, if that's...
Because they're 3 points. They're 3 points ahead of the relegation
zone
at the moment.
Exactly. I don't think they're in danger of going down, and I think he will doubly ensure they don't.
Well, if they don't get any points, they could.
Yes, they could, yes, but I'm sure with Harry in charge now that won't be the case.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is they should now immediately say, and look, will you do next season at least, because... He's 70 now, Harry, but he still seems to have an awful lot of energy.
Yes.
To be able to get to the players. And I can't think of anybody better to stabilise a club that, needs reminding that it can be a big club.
And what they've said to him is that if it all goes well and he keeps them up, then they may well have another conversation at the end of the season. So you may find himself as the Birmingham manager again next season.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think he should. He should be the Birmingham manager. Yeah,
I mean, he's got to travel up every day from the wrong side of the M25, hasn't he?
Well, it depends if he wants to or not. I mean, he used to travel up to London, to Spurs.
Yeah, but he's now got to go round the M25 and up to Birmingham.
Well, I don't think he'd do that daily, would he? Wouldn't he do what a lot of people do and have a temporary accommodation near his place of work?
But you see, that's difficult, isn't it? Because which days do you not go? Which days do you not spend in Birmingham?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as complicated a fixture schedule as like a Premier League club playing in Europe, but I know what you mean, yeah. Is there ever a good day not to go?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it would always be tricky. How about this from Julie? It says, Paul Mason of The Guardian says Labour will win, like Porky saying Everton and Liverpool will still two of the top 4 spots. # deluded. Well, Paul Mason's also the guy who's on Channel 4 News as their economics editor. And he is practically a sort of communist. He's a great Corbynite.
Oh, is he?
And, believes, of course, that because of the only people he talks to are indeed people that are like him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that everybody's going to vote for Corbyn.
Yeah,
which even people in the Labour Party don't think is going to happen.
No, they don't. You're absolutely right. What was quite interesting was, we had the debate recently about the fact that the Guardian now will have to move back to the north of England because they're so financially strapped. Yeah, to Manchester. And I did read a piece somewhere over the weekend saying that, people like Polly Toynbee, who regards herself as the queen bee of sort of...
Champagne socialism.
Champagne socialism and the chattering classes, mostly based in Islington in North London.
And, of course, Tuscany.
And Tuscany.
Where she's also got a house.
OK. Has she? I didn't know that, but OK, that's fine.
Yeah, she spends quite a lot of time in Italy.
That's great, yeah. I mean, she may have a problem moving to sort of Didsbury or Sale or Altrincham or somewhere like that, you know. Because A, she wouldn't be able to find it, and B, when she got there, she wouldn't be able to understand anything that anybody was saying because of the different regional accents, So I can't see that happening, and maybe in the shakedown after this election, it could be a brave new world for an awful lot of people.
You think?
Yeah.
In what sense?
Well, in the sense that I think some people's careers are going to be wiped out, because if you are attached... I mean, a lot of... you've got to remember, a lot of Tory politicians' careers were wiped out after the second Blair victory because they knew that a third was coming and they just quit and gave it up. Lots of them did. And I think that will happen to a lot of Labour people. If they see a decade now of dominance by... another party, in this case being the Conservatives, of course they'll cop out. Who wants to do 10 years in opposition? Opposition's miserable in the political world.
Well, you say that,
world.
But
it is miserable.
Well, unfortunately,
people hate it.
Yeah, well, they don't hate it as much as they used to because it's a much more lucrative business now than it used to be. And so an awful lot of people get into politics now, take the view that actually I can make quite a lot of money, I can make a great deal of contacts, I can find myself getting directorships at all kinds of levels, and basically I can be below the parapet, if you like, without actually having to worry too much and make a decent living for about 10 years without having to worry about it.
Well, I agree with that to an extent, but that usually is when you've been a minister and you go into opposition because the political tide has changed. So, if you've been a Labour minister and then you're thrown into opposition, you retain your seat, as you quite rightly say, but you get loads and loads of bonds for going and doing dinners and after dinners and directorships and all that. I don't think anybody who's a member of the Labour front bench who has not been a minister in this country will have anything like the same pulling power. And therefore, I think they'll just say, I'm going back to the city or something like that,
Well, maybe, but a lot of them, don't forget, are not actually people who would be qualified to do anything like that.
A lot of them never had a proper job anyway.
That's what I mean.
So they can't find anywhere to go.
That's why people got fed up with them, because we now have the birth of the kind of politician class.
Oh, yeah, they have
gone
to.
Straight from university, straight into a job in the Houses of Parliament as a researcher, and then suddenly they're an MP.
Or they've worked in some other area of public service, like, some blinking quango or something like that, and then come into politics. Never worked in a business where wealth has to be created. They've only worked in businesses where they have taken all the wealth from within that organisation and put it in their pocket.
Exactly right.
Yes.
This is Talk Sport.
Yes.
The Two Mikes, simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio.
Take me on a roller coaster. Take me for an airplane ride. Take me for a 6-day wonder. But don't you pull my ride side to side. What's real and ready for me? Baby James and Acapulco, we are flying down to Rio.
This is Talk Sport. We are the Two Mikes, and of course, there's an awful lot coming up, including Ask Porky a little bit later on. If you haven't done it yet, it is time to get yourself onto the Ask Porky gravy train. File yourself a question at the Two Mikes on Twitter, or go and look for our Facebook page. You can find them on there. That music, of course, means only one thing. It's time for Mr. Tim Vickery, who is here from Rio de Janeiro. Tim, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Yeah, it probably means two things. It means that Brian Ferry's bank balance has just got a little bit thicker as well.
Yes, I don't know how much by, I'd have to say. Probably, I mean, you may have contributed to enough for him to get himself, I don't know, a packet of Christmas crackers every 5 years or something.
Well, if he would care to share his good fortune with me, then let the record state I'm quite happy to accept.
Indeed. Now, we're in the midst of another a Champions League week, I suppose. Not particularly surprising that Leicester didn't manage to get past Diego Simeone with his 1-0 lead from Atletico Madrid. But tonight, it's Messi and Neymar and Suarez. Do you think Barcelona can get past Juventus?
Can't see it.
No.
Really can't see it. Not this time. Not this time. And I will watch very, very attentively, hoping that we're going to get some drama, although probably for the competition with the two Madrid sides going through tonight, it would be better if we didn't have three Spanish teams in the last four. But I would love to get some drama in there, but you can't see Paris Saint-Germain folding like. You can't see Juventus folding like Paris Saint-Germain did. I mean, one thing that struck me right at the start of that epic comeback that Barcelona managed against Paris Saint-Germain, that I thought the PSG goalkeeper froze. Right. The first goal, I don't know if you remember it, but it looped up into the air, and the keeper could have come out and caught it or punched it. End of move. He didn't. He froze. He stayed on his line. Can you really imagine Buffon freezing the same way? I can't. And with the goalkeeper there to inspire them, it's hard for me to see Juventus caving in, but I hope we're going to get some drama. I mean, we had plenty of drama in the last few hours, didn't we? And I hope we're going to get some more coming up.
But I think it's looking more and more like Real Madrid's Cup again, and that will make them the first team to retain the Champions League trophy, won't it?
Well, there's a few more games to be played yet, although maybe they've beat the best team. Yeah. But I don't know how this is going down on your side of the Atlantic, but over here, we're getting lots of talk about the refereeing. In fact, one thing that certainly the Brazilian media have picked up on is that the big German sports paper, Kicker, it's leading with Cristiano Ronaldo's hat-trick because they're making the point there. If this was a Brazilian paper, you'd see nothing of Cristiano Ronaldo. You just see the referee being pilloried. Yeah.
Well, they are saying that two of those goals were offside, and one of them involved a handball. So, but they're also saying, Tim, you're absolutely right, that because of the size of Real Madrid and Barcelona's influence, not just on Spanish football but on European football, they get all the dodgy decisions their way.
Yeah, well, the sending off went their way tonight, with two South Americans involved. Yep. Bayern lost their fella from Chile, Arturo Vidal, borderline second yellow card, while there were two opportunities when Real's Brazilian central midfielder Casemiro must have had his heart in his mouth, expecting the second yellow. He didn't get it. So that they were certainly marginal decisions that went Real's way. As against Paris Saint-Germain, the marginal decisions went Barcelona's way. I tend to think with a lot of these decisions, you could have as much video technology as you like. It's still going to be controversial because there are so many things that still come down to interpretation. The borderline offside things, on anyone who's worked in TV will agree with this one, I think, that the TV image doesn't prove things as definitively as they like to think it does, for two reasons. Number one, you're not always looking straight down the line, and number two, so much depends on the precise moment at which the director of images there freezes the frame. If it's just a millisecond before or a millisecond after, you might get a different result, which all goes to show what a difficult job it is to be a referee or a linesman.
Well, it is. I mean, we were listening to Danny Kelly a bit earlier on tonight, talking about how ridiculous it is, particularly for teams playing against Real Madrid at home and playing against Barcelona at home, which seems to be where the epicentre of all of this happens.
Yes, and the evidence is weighing up, isn't it? It's weighing up in favour of that point of view, which I suppose is another reason why, although I'd love to see Messi, Suarez and Neymar really pull out the magic in a few hours' time, I think the competition would benefit from Juventus getting through.
No, exactly right. And I suppose if Barcelona are going to launch any kind of comeback, it will be with the help of the referee. But, I mean, they can never really prove any of that, can they, as far as anything other than a bit of pressure that gets put on or the circumstances of the night in question?
No, because I think that in many cases this has nothing to do with foul practice whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's the scene, it's the noise, it's the environment. All of these things have an effect. And you know, I think that sometimes these borderline things, they happen on an entirely subconscious level. I don't. There clearly have been cases in the past with the Champions League when it used to be called the European Cup, when there was foul practice. I know that the great journalist Brian Glanville a few decades ago uncovered a scheme of foul practice, mainly at the time involving Italian clubs.
Oh, yeah.
So this clearly has gone on, and it goes on these days, I think, in betting scandals, although usually further down the food chain when it's a betting scandal, because then they're getting at referees in leagues that are less visible when you can get away with it more. There's a greater chance of no one noticing. Obviously, if you try and nobble a referee in a game where everyone's watching, then those decisions really do come under the microscope.
Well,
I think it's more of a psychological factor than foul practice.
The famous joke used to be, if you played Juventus, the referee always picked up his new Fiat after he left the stadium, didn't he? That was the joke. Now, talking about all this sort of shenanigans, what's this story about fair play in Brazil involving the great Everton striker Joe?
Yeah, the man who in English football invented the winter break.
Wasn't he also a Manchester City player?
Well,
that's right.
I think Everton took him from Manchester City. He didn't score a goal, and then realised that perhaps that's why Manchester City had let him go.
Yeah.
But what is the boy making waves about over there?
Well, Everton gave up on him when he went home for Christmas and New Year.
That's right, yeah.
Well, he was involved in one of those. It was a big semi-final, Corinthians against Sao Paulo. It's a big semi-final in Sao Paulo, and he's involved in a collision with the goalkeeper. He scored one goal, and it's a collision with the Sao Paulo goalkeeper there, and he gets a yellow card. Now, that yellow card would have suspended him from the second leg of the semi-final. But the Sao Paulo centre-back, Rodrigo Caio, he went over to the referee and he said, "Ref, you got that one wrong. The contact, it wasn't Joe having in contact with my goalkeeper, it was me. I collided with my own goalkeeper. Joe didn't deserve the yellow card." So that yellow card was rescinded. And a fine example of fair play. Joe is no longer suspended from the second leg, but Rodrigo Caio has come in for some stick from his own teammates.
Well, he's bound to, and his own manager would say, "What on earth are you letting him off the hook for?"
Well, also, I mean, the fans, I mean, as you've described them to us, Tim, the fans in Brazil are pretty fanatical, aren't they?
Yes, so Rodrigo Caio was going to get an award for this fair play. He said, "I don't want it." I think he wants to keep a low profile. His centre-back partner there at Sao Paulo, he seems to deplore what Rodrigo Caio has done. He said, "Look, I'd much rather have the mother of my opponent in tears than my own mother." Which really is... I often think, you know, that Maradona hand of God goal that he scored against England What on earth would have happened had he gone over to the referee and said, ref, I beat Peter Shilton with a little dink of my wrist? Right. Yeah. What would have happened? What would his teammates, what would they have done to him? Yeah. And I think it's a story that just goes to show, once again, how hard life is for a referee when a player who is honest gets so much opprobrium from his own teammates.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always believe when these players do this gesture of sportsmanship, there's always some there's always. I mean, Robbie Fowler.
That's a very cynical view you've got there.
No, I'm telling you, Robbie Fowler once was praised heartily for the fact that when he went down in the area, right. He waved to the referee and said, "It's okay, ref, I wasn't taken down."
Yeah.
But what everybody failed to spot was 36 hours earlier, the referee's body had ordered referees to clamp down on simulation, on diving in the area. So what Robbie Fowler was really saying to the referee was, it didn't happen, I didn't fall and I didn't dive, and everybody praised Robbie for, look at Robbie Fowler, he's saying he wasn't fouled in the area. He wasn't because he dived. So players usually have an element of self-interest in this.
Yeah, but unfortunately,
if that's a declaration of an Everton fan, I think you should declare an interest.
That's what I was about to say, Tim. Thank you for pointing that out. It's very sad that Porky has to use this opportunity to have another go at Liverpool. But let's talk about Chapecoense, because they're back in action in the Libertadores tonight. But there's a bit of a problem with lawsuits going around them.
Yeah, they've just kicked off their third game in the Libertadores at home to Nacional of Uruguay. The club who were involved in that tragic air disaster at the end of November picked up so much sympathy, but now the lawsuits looks like they're going to start to fly. What has happened here is the lawyers have got involved, and the consequence of this. Everyone ends up hating each other, and the lawyers end up getting much richer. Some of the families of the deceased look like they're going to take the club to court based on negligence for having done a deal with this particular airline to take them on that ill-fated flight. It was an airline which was a one airplane company, only had one plane, and it's come to light that it was travelling right at the limit of its fuel capacity, which is of course illegal. So it's a company which was cutting corners. Right. In the club's defence, this company, La Mia, had made massive inroads into transporting football teams around South America. And just a couple of weeks before this disaster, they carried Lionel Messi and the Argentina national team.
Wow.
So if you're Chapecoense, a little-known club with very little experience in international journeys, and a company comes to you and says, we've just transported the Argentine national team, I think you have every reason in good faith to believe that they're a well-established company.
Right. We got to go. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
we're out of time.
Thanks, Tim.
Unfortunately, thanks to that little ditty about Robbie Fowler. This is Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Craig asked quite a good question. Why does Tim Vickery not like Virginia Plain? It's a great song.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why he doesn't like Roxy music.
I don't either.
I think it's just because he's not used. He just doesn't like the idea that he has to be introduced to it every single time that he comes on.
No.
Mark says anything can happen in Spain when Real and Barca are involved. Juve and Allegri are brilliant, but the ref's influence does decide games. So,
yes.
I mean, there is a possibility, I suppose you'd have to say, in the same way there was last night with Leicester, that Barcelona could do the dirty on Juventus, but it seems very unlikely.
Yeah.
I said at the beginning of this week that I thought that the teams that were leading from the first legs would all go through.
Did you?
And so far, that's what's happening.
I can't remember you saying that.
Yeah, well, you can't remember what you said, never mind what I said.
Do you know I've just
but
found
I'm telling
out
you now that Monaco and Juventus are going through.
Monaco and Juventus?
Yes, and I did already tell you that I thought that Atletico and
I'm not arguing
Real
with that.
Would go through.
I'm not arguing with that.
Okay.
Monaco and Juventus, I would agree, which means it's Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Plus
Atletico Madrid.
Plus Atletico Madrid, Monaco and Juventus.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that.
Right.
And then the draw for the semi, which is completely sort of at random.
What do you mean at random?
Well, I mean, it's not like a pool situation where we know they're all moving towards each other's draw.
No, there's another draw to be made.
Another draw. Yeah. So who do Real Madrid want to get to the final?
I think they beat Atletico Madrid in the semi-final last year.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
or was it in the final last year they beat them? I can't remember.
It was in the final.
I think it was in the final.
Yeah,
but they've beaten them before. I think they would quite like to get Atletico Madrid because they have beaten them a couple of times this season in the La Liga.
And the whole atmosphere in Spain is that Real are such a dominant club over Atletico. Will give them an advantage, wouldn't it? Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that...
And then they'll meet Juventus in the final.
And they've beaten Juventus in a final before as well.
They have, yes.
But maybe Juventus are a bit tougher now.
And then they'll travel to Wales, boyo.
What?
And they will be playing the final in the
Millennium
Millennium. Oh, yes, boyo.
What was I saying about that the other day?
What were you saying? I don't know, boyo.
Well, there's something going on. Why are you doing a stupid voice?
Oh, no. That is my friends in Wales. They speak like that, you know.
Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, they're worried about drone attacks. So they might shut the roof.
Yeah, well...
Do you know what else I've seen today?
What?
Which is very spooky, right? And a couple of people have pointed this out to me.
Yeah.
But do you remember the great pigeon story that became very humorous and famous? We used to play it out at the live shows that we did. You know, your allegation that, you know, armies...
It wasn't just an allegation. It's true. You take a pigeon's brain out of a pigeon, put it into a soldier's head, and that soldier, if he's a pilot of a supersonic plane, will always know which direction north is.
Yeah, and he also know how to find his way home.
Yes, that's right.
If he somehow loses
his way on the battlefield.
His mojo, or he loses his GPS machine.
Yeah.
Well, but unbelievably, the story has surfaced again.
Really?
Right, it's in the Daily Mail this morning.
Right.
This morning's paper, tomorrow morning's paper.
Yes.
But it's just like a single column story on page 35.
And what's it say?
Homing pigeons can pass on the secrets of navigation to their companions and offspring, just like humans.
Thank you.
And it says they share.
I was right all along.
Well, I never said you weren't right. I just said the idea that they were going to take a pigeon's brain out and implant it into the mind of a soldier.
Yeah,
that was the bit that wasn't right.
No, that bit was right. No, that was what I learned from military intelligence, mate, which you don't know anything about.
No, they're not going to do that. What is the true story is, again, right, the true story is that basically pigeons have a great ability to find their way home, because that's why they're called homing pigeons. But they're not going to take their brains out and put them anywhere. Second paragraph says this: they share the capacity to build on the knowledge of others, which may explain how their navigational accuracy improves over time. Yeah. So an Oxford University study.
Yeah.
So there you are.
Well, there you go. I could have told you that as well. Do you know what I've just found out doing a bit of research about this election?
I have no idea.
Do you know what opens next week in London?
What opens next week in London?
The Scottish Government's swish new London HQ on the Embankment.
Oh, right. So I must go and visit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
It's going to be opened by the lovely Nicola Sturgeon.
Nicola Sturgeon will open the Scottish Government's swish new London HQ on the Embankment next week. To explain to our millions of listeners who are lucky enough not to have to live in London, the Embankment...
Well, you say lucky enough not to have to live in London. London's a magnificent city. And anyone who does live here should count themselves very fortunate.
It brings its own problems, but the Embankment is sort of, what would you call it, swish sort of area, isn't it, the Embankment?
Well, the Embankment is really tourist central, isn't it?
Tourist central, but any property on the Embankment is very expensive.
Well, I don't know anyone that lives there. I mean, it's all hotels and government buildings.
Yeah, but any property is very expensive, right? Yeah. So why have the Scottish Government, which are not a real government anyway, they're a pretend government.
They are a government.
No, they're a pretend government.
They're not a pretend government.
They're not an independent country.
They are a proper government.
But they're not an independent country.
They have an elected parliament which makes laws. That makes them a government.
But they're not an independent country.
No, they're not an independent country.
So we don't have an ambassador with each other, so it's not a proper country.
Well, it's a proper country in the sense that they do have their own parliament and they do make their own laws.
So why do the Scottish Government need a swish new London HQ on the Embankment, one of the most, expensive bits of real estate in the world?
Well, they would have always had the Scottish office, right, which would be part of the government buildings of that particular part of the world. Now, they may have
Whitehall, that was.
Yeah, but that's near the Embankment. They may have done away with that, and instead now they've moved to the Embankment.
So anyway, it says that no doubt when Ms Sturgeon is opening this building, she will have hopes that it will eventually become the Foreign Embassy before too long. Staff and other officers in the same building have been warned to stay away in an internal email sealed with a statement, yes, there will be a bagpiper on the day.
A bagpiper on the day? Well, that's good. I'll go down there and listen. I like a bit of bagpiping.
I quite like a bagpiper at a wedding, actually.
Do you know when I would go to Turnberry, on which I used to do on quite a regular basis, every night at 6 o'clock at Turnberry, they've got a man playing the bagpipe.
Well, that's good. I think that's good.
It's lovely. The sound drifts across the sea.
Yeah, that's right.
And across the golf course.
Over the sea to sky.
In this case, it's over the sea to Ailsa Craig, actually.
Yeah. Actually, I found something else out as well, which you will no doubt.
Well, hang on. What day is this opening? This place?
Next week, sometime.
Next week.
What, you think they're going along?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, pay a bit of homage to Nicola Sturgeon.
I'll go along. Yeah,
your former champagne swilling socialist mate.
I'll go and say hello.
Yeah, sure.
I might even get an invite. In fact.
Yeah. Now,
I may take my daughter along.
Sorry?
I may take my daughter along.
Take your daughter along. Yeah. I don't know why you think it would improve the education of a young, ambitious, media executive, as your daughter is in this town, to meet Nicola Sturgeon.
She's already done interviews with her, so they know each other. So, I mean, I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Yeah,
but we won't be inviting you along because you obviously are a bit rough for that sort of episode.
Oh, yeah.
You're not to be trusted, and you can't, to be honest, the sort of clothes you wear, I'd be embarrassed to take you anywhere like that.
Well, I couldn't care less what you think about my clothes. A specialist unit to be set up to prevent drones flying drugs and mobile phones into prisons in England and Wales.
Why are you telling me about this?
Because you've just mentioned drones and
with regards to
the Millennium Stadium.
No, this is with regards to the football. That's what I want to talk about.
Now, do you not think that a prison and a football stadium like the Millennium are around about the same size?
What?
So they could both have the same problem with drones.
Well, prisons are much easier to break into than the Millennium Stadium.
What do you mean?
Well, they don't have anything like the height of the Millennium Stadium. And in order to put a drone inside the Millennium Stadium, you've got to raise it all the way up to the top of the stadium.
But drones can fly at 10,000 feet.
Then we've got to put it all the way inside the thing. Whereas with a prison, all they've got to do is fly over a fence, which is probably no more than about 20 feet high.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter how high it is.
It does.
You've got a bloke with a box standing on the banks of the River Taff.
The River Taff. And, I'll tell you where you could do it from, actually, without wishing to give anyone ideas. In that hotel we stayed in, we were in Cardiff.
Yes, you could, actually.
Because out of my back window, I could see the Millennium Stadium.
Yes, that's right, of course, You can from most of the
windows.
windows.
In fact, where I parked my car, I was literally in the shadow of the stadium.
Yeah, that's right, and just lifted over the roof and all that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, it says, specialist unit set up to prevent drones flying drugs and mobile phones into prisons in England and Wales. Prisons have recorded a steep increase in incidents involving the remote control devices around jails because so much of it now is...
Apparently, the jails in this country are a complete and utter joke, right?
Yeah, they are a complete joke.
They're run by these private companies who don't seem to have a handle on how to keep order, who don't seem to have enough people to make sure that everybody's able to be safe.
No, that's right.
And who don't seem to have a clue as to whether people are taking drugs or not, or whether they're making phone calls or not.
Did you see the report last week which said the prisoners now wander around in their pyjamas and up and down the corridors and all this kind of stuff? In some of the prisons, some of the wings are no-go areas, allegedly, because gangs of, people of certain disposition are running them. What about this one here? It says, one of the most surprising finds was a drone with drugs, a mobile phone charger, and USB cards, which infiltrated the walls of HMP Oakwood near Wolverhampton earlier this year. I mean, this is a joke.
Well, I mean, and now, of course, people are making the argument that, surely we shouldn't be sending people to prison anymore because it's barbaric. And, in fact, we'd be better off trying to teach them some other form of rehabilitation. Well, I'm sorry. I just think they ought to make the prisons better and make them more secure and make them a bit more dangerous to be in as far as, individuals are concerned.
Yes.
And for people to be a bit more scared about actually going to them.
Yes, but don't you also think that we have to rehabilitate prisoners and try and teach them to do something useful when they come out of jail instead of just banging them up?
No.
Well, I do.
No.
I do, because I read about a case of a chap who was
a
down-and-out and useless, went to prison, but they trained him as an upholsterer, believe it or not.
An upholsterer? Was he the guy that nicked a chair?
No, he wasn't. No. I don't know why he was an upholsterer.
Well,
they trained him as an upholsterer.
It's an easy pickings.
Came out, he now works as an upholsterer. I think you've got to train people in jail to be useful members of society when they come out. I don't think just locking a bloke up in a cell and then going in with the rubber hose twice a week and bashing him over
I think that's the way to
head
go.
with it.
I wish somebody locked you up for a couple of weeks.
That's a bit harsh.
This is Talk Sport.
The Two Mics, simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio.
Unfortunately, Bantam Bouncer does not appreciate this kind of music. He says bagpipes are the worst sounding instrument ever.
Sounds
like you're squeezing a dead cat.
Have you never heard Mull of Kintyre?
Yeah, of course I have.
No, I'm talking about our correspondent there. What's his name again?
Bantam Bouncer.
OK, Bantam Bouncer. Have a quick listen to Paul McCartney's Mull of Kintyre, mate.
It's not the greatest aficionado of the pipes,
you will appreciate the beauty of the bagpipe.
How about this from Rodney?
Yeah.
It says, Porky must have had a Wetherspoon's pigeon's brain implanted, as that's the place he always returns to.
How funny is that?
That's very good. Paul said, how about the black dolphin in Russia? That's a perfect example of how to run a prison. You should check it out.
The black dolphin?
Yeah.
Is that like the black Lubyanka?
I guess it must be somewhere
horrible.
I
suppose so,
I don't think you want to go to prison in Russia, would you?
No, of course you wouldn't.
And
There's
how about,
a lot of places you wouldn't go to prison in, like Mexico and Costa Rica and places like that.
Yeah, Nick says this, utter drivel, Porky. HMP Preston couldn't fill the Millennium Stadium, but B-Wing could easily fill Goodison and its single cells.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that
don't know what he's
rubbish
alluding
is
to
about.
there.
No, neither do I.
Now, I've got a question for you.
Yes?
Are you a member of an organisation called something like the Landlords... Cooperative Board?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, well, you have to be. If you invest in property, then you have to, just like trade unions band together to protect themselves against evil employers, then people who invest in property do have associations where they get together because, you want to make sure the government don't see you as a cash cow and are constantly up in the taxes on property, which is what the current Tory government has been doing lately and which has upset me greatly and causing me deep distress and sleepless nights.
So are you saying that you belong to this kind of professional organisation which lobbies on your behalf and on behalf of other landlords to make sure that you don't actually have to pay your fair share of taxes?
No, I pay my fair share of taxes. I just don't want to pay an unfair share of taxes. It's a landlord's associate. There's thousands of people who are members of it, and that's the reason.
Do you ever meet anybody from that organisation?
Well, you kind of correspond on email and all that kind of stuff,
There's a bit of a scandal going on at the moment. I don't know if you've heard about this.
No, there's no scandal involved. These are good people who invest their money wisely.
No, there's a terrible scandal going on, which I've picked up on, which is going on in parts of the country, different parts of the country.
What's this to do with leaky roofs and all that kind of stuff?
No. You'll hear about it in a second. It's in places like Maidstone, in Rochester, in Kent, in Brighton. It's happening, and there's such a thing as sex for rent deals, which seem to be being offered by certain unscrupulous types, right? Landlords who have got properties to rent out, and what they're doing is preying on, the pennilessness of some young people,
right?
And basically saying to them and advertising this, right, on things like Craigslist.
What?
Basically saying you can come and live here for free as long as you can be my girlfriend for a while or my boyfriend for a while, and I'll just pop in from time to time.
That's like sex slavery.
And have a bit of horizontal refreshment.
Oh, that's disgusting.
And that's how you can pay the rent.
Well,
what sort of organisation is this?
Well, it's
a shocking situation.
Not one I want to be a member of, I'm telling you. That's disgraceful.
It's disgusting.
Preying young people like that who are broke and, say, oh, blimey, come on, rumpy-pumpy in exchange for a free
this one here,
accommodation. That's terrible.
This was posted in Maidstone in Kent, right?
Yeah.
Posted by a man who was a landlord seeking a woman who would move in and pretend to be his girlfriend.
Pretend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another was advertising a double room in Rochester, available in exchange for open quote services.
Really? Well, that's a disgrace. I mean, if I came across
surely there must be
like
some kind of law against this.
Well, there should be a law against it, but I suppose that at the end of the day, you're saying, well, it's consensual, relationships between two adults. But I have to say, if I came across that and anything like that happened in any property I was associated with, I would clamp down on it very strongly.
A young woman who spoke to this organisation on condition of anonymity said that she felt under pressure to keep her landlord happy. They could just come over to you and say, I want sex now, and you don't have much of a choice because you know it's their home and you want to just keep that place.
Well, that's a disgrace.
That's awful.
You've got to clamp down on that. I'm not having that sort of thing.
Horrendous.
It's awful. Yeah.
So I think what they're going to try and do is clamp down on the advertising of it. But I mean, incredible that somebody would be so brazen as to offer that kind of, service.
Well, I do as well. I have to say I'm rather disappointed.
I mean, presumably when you vet your tenants, you use some kind of agency to do that, do you?
Well, they have to come with references, and you have to look out for things like county court judgments and that sort of thing.
What about like the Egyptian doctor? How do you check his references from Egypt?
Well, really, you do that through the medical authorities. For instance, he'd only moved to where he is because he's working at a local hospital. So you go to the hospital and you check that he is actually he is a paediatrician. They look after children.
Yes, they do.
That's right. Yeah, he's a paediatrician.
Either that or a podiatrist who looks after feet.
No. He's a paediatrician and a very qualified man. And a nice guy. Nice
but
job,
I mean, if he's only been living in this country for a short period of time.
No, I think he's been here a while.
Has he?
Been here for a while.
What would you do if he didn't have a long enough credit references or something?
Well, I wouldn't let him take the place in the first place.
So you wouldn't just try and go to Egypt and find out?
No, definitely not. Why? Because there's a queue of people who want to there's a shortage of property in this country, and there are people who will always take up rental opportunities.
There's no shortage of property in this country at all. There's a shortage of affordable property in this country. Yeah. Something else.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
One landlord, right, told the people who were doing this investigation.
Yes.
He says you can argue that high rent charged by landlord is taking advantage as well. There's no compulsion for anybody to do this. Everyone goes into it with their eyes open. He's basically saying that, if you rent a property from him and he says that, as part of the deal, you have to have some kind of, Rogerisation going on with it.
Yes.
You just have to expect it.
Well, that gives us all a bad name. I mean, I wouldn't dream of getting involved in a situation like that.
Certainly
I find that rather seedy and very, very unsavoury.
I think you might want to reconsider your membership of this organisation.
Well, I might have a look. I might go and talk to people. Yeah. I'm actually rather grateful for you bringing that to my attention.
Not at all.
Because that's not the sort of thing I would wish to be associated with. Yes. Under any circumstances.
There's an MP, actually, who's involved in it. For the MP for Hove. Who says there is an onus on the owners of these platforms to root this out and deal with this. And he's talking about places like Craigslist. They shouldn't allow these adverts to run.
There's an awful lot of rental property in Hove.
Is there?
Brighton, Hove. A tremendous amount of rental property down there.
Have you got any there that you rent out?
No, I haven't. But I've looked at stuff occasionally. It's a bit of a generalisation, but a lot of the property in Brighton certainly is old, and old property requires quite a lot of maintenance, so I've veered away from it.
Okay. I've got this from Patrick. I'm surprised Porky isn't asking MG for more details on this landlord scam. Sounds right up his street.
Well, no, it's a disgrace. People who are renting property can often be quite vulnerable, because you quite rightly say they are...
Well, they're often not particularly well endowed financially.
Well, they live week to week and that kind of stuff, so you have to be very careful how you sort of structure the finances for
David
things
says,
like that.
Porky, do the Slum Landlords Association have a secret handshake?
I've no idea, because A, there is no Slum Landlords Association, and B, I wouldn't get involved in any organisation like that, know. And I'm getting rather, sick and tired and fed up of having my character impugned in this way on this show.
No, I'm just saying that some of your colleagues in this Landlords Association are rather sort of batting below the belt, as it were.
Yeah.
Which is not a very good thing for them to be doing.
Yeah, well, you could well be right.
And Bantam Bouncer says, why should prisoners get all the free training when law-abiding people can't get it without paying for it? It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Well, you were the one that was saying that, people who go to prison should be somehow taught to do a job.
Well, I think they should. I believe in the old adage of don't give a man a fish, teach him how to fish, and then he can look after himself. So if you send a bloke to jail and all you do is lock him up 23 hours a day, and all he does is spend his time spaced out on homemade hooch in the jail and
marijuana
and the zombie drug, which is now quite legal outside of jail.
Drug?
What's it called?
What's
Spice?
Spice?
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know about that.
It is, yeah. If
you're an expert in the zombie drug now.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
They're selling a lot of it down in Gosport, are they?
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
In that funny pub across where you live from.
No, there's nothing funny about that at all.
Yeah, it looks a bit of a zombie sort of hangout.
No, it doesn't. How dare you be so personally
It's horrible
abusive.
down there.
It's not horrible down there.
It is horrible.
At all. It's not.
It's disgusting.
We've got one of the best women's darts teams in the country. What's your problem with that?
That's great. How about this from Andy?
Yeah.
He says the SNP government has a track record in leading the way in building social housing in the UK.
Yeah.
The new London hub is to attract investment.
Really?
I mean, it's amazing what some people believe, isn't it?
I think the Scottish Government also leads the way in this country, spending public money.
Yeah.
I mean, vast amounts of it, to build vast buildings, to house people who are politicians, who don't really have a job.
Yeah.
They down due to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown thinking, well, the best way to stop Scottish independence is to give them sort of half a government in a huge
Which
building.
didn't work at all.
No.
Do you know what they also
just wiped Labour out.
But do you know what they also did? In addition to building that Parliament building,
Holyrood,
which cost 400 million instead of 40, right?
That's right, yeah.
Just around the corner from where we had lunch down in Leith, there's another massive building, right, which houses all the civil servants who now have to work for the Scottish Parliament.
That's right.
Do you know how many of them there are?
No.
3,500.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
In a massive building.
Like an army of people, which cost another sort of probably, 200 million or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely right.
You're absolutely right.
But also the people in Scotland who vote for the SNP, who hate politicians, they say, have got so much faith in the SNP that they think everything they do is great.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't quite make those things add up.
And that Holyrood, you're right, I think it's the most over-budgeted building in the world. It did
10
go
times over budget.
It went from 38 million, which is the original planning cost, to nearly 400.
That's
You're
right.
absolutely right.
410.
Unbelievable.
Incredible.
Unbelievable.
This is TalkSport.
Don't phone your mother. Phone Talk Sport.
Football on DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
Athletico Radio.
Talk Sport.
I've had enough of reading things by neurotic, psychotic, pig-headed politicians. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. No short head, yellow belly, son of tricky dick is gonna mother her but top so me but just a pocket full of hope.
This is TalkSport. We are the two mics. Everybody's been watching out east, I guess you might say, because North Korea has been testing missiles, threatening to test more missiles, saying that they will test their missiles as and when they feel like it. The Americans, under Donald Trump's aegis, are saying, well, we'll tell you what you can and can't do. The Chinese keeping an eye on it. Nobody's exactly sure what's going on. South Korea has been evacuating various areas. We're going to talk now to an expert who's over in Canada right now at the Centre for International Governance Innovation. It's Benoit Hardy-Chartrand, Senior Research Associate and East Asia expert. Benoit, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, we're reading an awful lot. I mean, we've just had an election called here, so we've got an election coming up in the next couple of months. But, I mean, up until this moment, we've been having an awful lot of headlines about the North Koreans, about Kim Jong-un, about the possibility of a nuclear meltdown of some kind or other. You're an expert in this area. How worried should we be about him?
Well, look, there are certainly grounds to be worried. But it's important to put things in perspective here. I mean, since 1953, the end of the Korean War, I mean, tensions have been always simmering close to the surface between the United States and North Korea, between South Korea and North Korea, and periodically tensions sort of boil over. And right now, this is certainly a time when tensions boil over. I would say that the reason why it's certainly a little bit more concerning right now is that we have an administration in the United States that seems to be a little more willing to talk about the possibility of preemptive strikes on North Korea. And this is not something we were hearing before from the Obama administration. So because of that mere difference in the fact that North Korea seems intent on continuing its nuclear program, it is certainly, I would say, a little more concerning than usual.
Benoit, I've read President Trump's book called The Art of the Deal. And it's all about gambling, you know, who's going to blink first and can you use the confidence you have in yourself against your opponents and all that kind of stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, the North Koreans are just bluffing. They haven't really got anything, have they? And if the Americans really wanted to, could they not take out all the sites which pose a threat to the Western world and anybody else in that region?
Right. Well, this is an interesting question because certainly a large part of what North Korea is doing is bluff because it is in their interest to show that they are more powerful, that they have more capabilities than they actually have. But it would be very dangerous to actually discount the real threat that they do pose and the real giant strides that they have made on their missile program and nuclear program in the last few years. I mean, just look at 2016. Kim Jong-un conducted 26 ballistic missile tests. He's conducted 2 nuclear tests, and every time their capabilities, their tests seem to be a little more successful, although for sure they do have failures. So we cannot completely just dismiss that and say that they don't have these capabilities. Now, you also asked me if Donald Trump, if the United States could simply wipe them out.
Yes.
I mean, the capabilities certainly are there. The United States, their military, and the South Korean military is certainly overwhelmingly superior to North Korea. The main problem here, Mike, is that if we look at the fact that Seoul and South Korea is just basically being held hostage by North Korea, and the moment that the United States would conduct a strike on North Korea, even before they were completely disabled, they would have plenty of time to inflict irreparable damage on South Korea, where we have to remember 28,000 American troops are located.
Sure. No, I understand that.
Interesting thing as well, Benoit, is that is a lot of people are asking if they do have a nuclear capability, and as you've just said there very eloquently, you know, they might be working on that. Where are they getting that from? Are they buying it in,
Pakistan, isn't it?
Or are they developing it within their own country?
Yeah, well, that's also a good question, because in the 1960s, that is when the North Koreans started being interested in nuclear technology. And back then, we have to remember that the Soviet Union was the main ally, the main, basically, mentor of North Korea. Yeah. So they obtained their first capabilities, their first reactors from the Soviet Union. So originally, certainly, they got a lot of help from that. After that, they got a lot of help for their nuclear program from several, let's call them like Parry states, like Pakistan, helped them a lot on their nuclear program. So they got a lot of help from several countries that are considered somewhat renegade. But to this day, it's important to mention that they have developed such capabilities that although they're certainly not where they want it to be, it's pretty much an indigenous nuclear force that they have. They're able to continue developing that with relatively little help from the outside world.
Isn't the position now, Benoit, that it could be that the US military intelligence has so infiltrated whatever North Korea have got that the recent explosion of the latest missile test was prompted by somebody in the CIA pressing a button and blowing the missile up? And if that's the case, can the North Koreans afford to launch any more missiles because they believe they might be humiliated every time they do, because the Americans can now blow them up?
Right. And that's an interesting point, because you probably are referring to the fact that the United States, since 2014, have been working really hard to not per se infiltrate the North Korean missile system, but to basically conduct cyber attack. And the purpose of that is to actually disrupt their missile launches before they're actually launched from North Korea, because once they're launched, obviously you can imagine it's a lot harder to intercept and to counter these launches.
Yes.
So it is certainly possible that the latest failure from last Sunday could be a result of American cyber warfare, viruses that were implanted in North Korean systems. But there's no way to know, obviously. There's no way to know if that's a real result of that. Yeah. But there's no doubt that the United States are working really hard to really disrupt their systems before these systems are actually used. And that you mentioned it may actually make them a little more wary of future failures, because that doesn't look good not only in front of the world, but in front of their own population.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
And we saw an interesting kind of development just the other day where they were very excited about something, and a lot of journalists in that part of the world were put on notice that something was going to be announced, and they weren't sure what it was. They thought it might be a new missile, or it might be some kind of new piece of military hardware. In fact, they were opening up a new street in Pyongyang. And in fact, they were kind of boasting about the fact that we are still able to be a commercial entity as a country, despite all these sanctions and everything else. Does that signal anything different about his approach now, Kim Jong-un?
Well, what it signals is that Kim Jong-un and the regime is really trying to show the world that it's the country's economy is developing. They don't need to be conducting trade with the rest of the world, and to show that they're an actual normal, powerful, prosperous country, which is, as we all know, obviously not the case. But by bringing these journalists and having them witness only what the regime wants them to witness, they hope that this basically will portray their country in a very good light. Now, obviously, it doesn't, because we all know that this is all arranged. This is all very closely orchestrated by the regime. But the reality is this is just what they want to show the world, that their economy is developing.
And just one question about military hardware, Benoit. You may or may not know the answer to this.
Right.
I see that there are 3 US carriers, all Nimitz-class carriers, now in that part of the world, in the oceans around North Korea. The Ronald Reagan, the Nimitz, and the Carl Vinson. Now, what I don't quite understand is this. It was proven by the last American strike on Syria that you don't need aeroplanes anymore to take out, most of what you want to get rid of in a foreign land. Why are those ships with a collective 300 aeroplanes on them, why are they of any military use anymore?
So that's an interesting question. But the reality here, that it's all about signaling. It's all about showing resolve for the United States. It's about showing the North Koreans that they will not put up with these provocations anymore. So you're perfectly right in saying that the actual deployment of these ships, when it comes to military strategy, may not have the utmost purpose. But the reality is it still really helps in terms of optics to show North Korea, to show Kim Jong-un that the Trump administration means business. Yeah. And you also talked about the strikes on Syria. And that's all related to that, of course. The strike on Syria, and a week later, the so-called mother of all bombs in Afghanistan.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that this has a link to North Korea. They wanted to publicize that when North Korea was conducting provocations. So again, this is all about optics and showing that they will not deal with the North Koreans as Obama did.
Yeah, sure.
And finally, Benoit, what about the United Nations? I mean, we've seen them sort of standing by and being pretty useless when it comes to Syria, when it comes to many problems around the world. I mean, what's their view of North Korea, and are they stymied in a way by whatever China says they want to do?
Right. Well, they're certainly stymied, yes. And the main issue is, when we look at the United Nations, it often looks very weak. And the reality is, it is, but that's because the member states, especially of the Security Council, simply do not want it to work because they each have their own vested interests. And China, as you mentioned, just doesn't want any more pressure to be put on North Korea. And even Russia. Russia is sort of siding with China on this. So we find ourselves with a Security Council where you have Russia and China on one side and the U.S., France, and Great Britain on the other. So if you put that together, obviously it makes for a Security Council and a United Nations that simply does not have the tools, the means to have any meaningful results or consequences on this situation.
Absolutely right. Well, listen, Benoit, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for spending the time to talk to us. Benoit Hardy-Chartrand, there, Senior Research Associate and East Asia Expert at the Centre for International Governance Innovation. Fascinating stuff. It doesn't sound as though we can ignore this guy.
No.
But equally, it doesn't sound as if World War III is right around the corner.
No.
But we'll have to keep watching the situation. This is TalkSport.
The Two Mics, simulcast across the UK on TalkSport and Talk Radio.
She can kill with a smile, she can wound with her eyes, and she can ruin your faith with her casual lies. And she only reveals what she wants you to see. She hides like a child, but she's always a woman to me. She can lead you to love, she can take you or leave you. She can ask for the truth, but she'll never believe. And she'll take what you give her as long as it's free. Yeah, she steals like a thief, but she's always a woman to me. Oh, she takes care of herself. She can wait if she wants. She's ahead of her time.
Billy Joel has played, the new Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum 33 times.
Where?
33. You know Nassau in Long Island?
Nassau, not the Bahamas.
Not Nassau in the Bahamas, no, Nassau in Long Island,
yes.
which you would have gone out to when you were heading to Kennedy Airport.
Yes, that's right.
And he's from Long Island, right?
Yes, of course, yeah.
And it's
got a huge mansion there.
Yeah, Long Island is to Billy Joel what, Bruce Springsteen is to New Jersey kind of thing.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And they've redone, the Nassau Coliseum was a famous, rock venue.
Really?
All the bands used to go and play there.
Yeah.
But they've renovated it, right? And seemingly, he's been on some kind of amazing bender of concerts, and about 33 concerts he's done there now.
What, you mean consecutively?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he's one of the great survivors, isn't he?
He is.
Because he's married to Christy Brinkley.
Yeah, it didn't go well.
No, it didn't go well. And in fact, I think I've told you this before. I stumbled across the making of
that video
of Uptown Girl.
Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't insert yourself into the video.
I should have done, shouldn't I? Really, got in there and helped them out. But
I went to see him one night because I can't remember who it was, but somebody staggered into Costello's one night. Who was associated with him in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
And the usual thing, it was got to about sort of 6:30, 7:15, and this guy said, "Does anybody want to go and see Billy Joel?"
Yeah.
And most of the guys were just
not
like,
then?
not really. And I said, I'd quite like to see Billy Joel. He was playing at Madison Square Garden.
Right.
So this guy produced 2 tickets out of his pocket and said, there you go.
Yes.
And off I went.
And off you went.
It was tremendous.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Good.
About 1986.
Yeah. No. Oh, he was at his peak then. He was terrific.
And it was during a time when the World Series was on.
Yes.
And the Mets were playing. Right. And the Mets, of course, were his team. He was from Long Island. So in between every song, he was updating the crowd on what the Mets were doing.
Yeah, I see.
It was fantastic.
Yeah. Keep you in touch.
Yeah.
Now, I've got some great news for people who manufacture bar snacks.
What?
bar snacks, you know.
This is not another shameless plug for your Porky Scratchings.
Listen, I didn't mention them.
You're going to get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I didn't mention them. You did.
Okay.
I mean, just so happens that I have to have an association with the bar snacks company who produce the Mike Porky Parry Porky Scratchings.
How's that all going, by the way?
It's going very well, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, listen.
Somebody asked me the other day whether you were funding the advertising that was going into the Two Mikes website.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Given that it's a sort of another one of your solo organised deals.
What is?
The Porky Scratchings.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So whether we're giving you free advertising space on the Two Mikes website, which is jointly owned by us.
No, don't worry about that.
As opposed to the Porky Scratchings, which is not jointly owned by us.
No, don't worry. No such...
I'm not worried about it.
No such,
I just want to make sure that everything is on the level.
Infidelic sort of practices taking place.
Because you can't be trusted when it comes to these
What I've managed to do is I've managed to find new scientific evidence which proves that people who manufacture bar snacks, including sort of Porky Scratchings...
Yeah, and other bar snacks which are available.
Well, if people don't want Porky Scratchings, I suppose they are, yeah. But it is not a cynical plan to stock bars with things with salt in them so that you drink more, right?
Yeah, because you're going to tell me that people that eat salty things actually don't get any more thirsty, aren't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolute rubbish.
Absolutely. It's
absolute
in
rubbish.
one of my scientific journals.
Has this been research as performed by people who make Porky Scratchings?
No. This has been done completely independently.
By whom?
By independent bodies. It says the idea that eating too much salt makes you thirsty may be nothing more than an old wives' tale.
Maybe.
Scientists have concluded, okay?
Maybe nothing more.
In a study carried out during a simulated mission to Mars... Researchers found that astronauts who ate more salt retained more water and were not as thirsty and were hungrier.
Oh, so if you're up in space, you don't get any more thirsty.
Exactly.
But what about if you're on land?
Well,
you're on the Earth.
It all relates
well,
to...
no, it doesn't. I mean, the circumstances up in space are entirely different.
No.
There's no gravity for a start.
No, you can relate all this to... You see, people have said for years, it's a cynical exercise to put crisps and peanuts
of course
and
it is.
Porky Scratchings into bars because people eat them, there's salt on them, and then they want to drink more.
That's
it is
true.
utter nonsense.
Rubbish.
This was published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation, right?
And the Journal of Clinical Investigation?
Yes, Journal of Clinical Investigation,
well,
right?
That must be all right then.
And what I'm telling you is that the new results showed... without having to get down to detail, salt stays in the human urine. While water moved back into the kidney,
show this, you know.
I know, and the body, and thirst is not increased with increase. What are you laughing at? And thirst.
I don't know what urine is.
Thirst is not increased
is
with
that
increase.
Like Irene?
Excuse
Come on,
me.
Irene.
No,
Come on, Urine by Dexy's Midnight Runners.
Would you let me finish, please? Thirst is not increased with increases of salt consumed into the body.
Rubbish.
Okay?
Absolute rubbish.
Eating more salt led to a higher salt content and found a correlation between amounts of salt and overall quantity of water, i.e. urine, in the body, okay?
What?
But the increase was
not all water in the body's urine, is it?
Well, a lot of it is.
No, it isn't. Well, maybe in your body.
But the increase was not due to more drinking. In fact, a salty diet caused the subjects to drink less, triggering a mechanism to conserve water in the kidneys.
What?
Now,
but the point is, if you eat a lot of salt, right, regardless of whether that salt comes via snacks, whether you just put a lot of salt on your food, it tends to make you more thirsty.
No, it doesn't. No, definitely not. No, this is proof. This is proof.
It's not proof.
I will read the workings and the writings.
Is it sponsored by KP, this?
Of the leader of this investigation.
Leader. What's his name?
Professor Friedrich C. Luft, who is the... What's your problem? Who's
Professor Luft?
Yeah, it is Luft. Yeah, no, it is Professor C. Luft.
Right.
Who is the managing director of Charité University Hospital in Berlin. And he said it's not...
Luft.
Yeah. He said this is... Hang on. He said this is all an assumption. It's an assumption which has now been disproved. He said...
Cobblers.
No, hang on. This man's an expert. He says it turns out to be a very important osmolyte. It's all about the salt.
That's like osmosis, isn't it? You know what that is?
Yes, of course I know what it is.
What's osmosis?
It's moving of water through a substance by traction.
Isn't osmosis what plants do?
Yeah, that's right. They turn things green and all that kind of stuff.
No, they don't turn things green.
No, they don't. That's called...
Isn't it the absorption of...
It's absorption of
water.
Moisture, that's right, yeah. So anyway, it turns out to be a very important osmolyte.
Right.
A compound that binds to water.
I used to like them.
Yeah.
The osmolytes.
Ooh, the Israelites. That was Desmond Decker.
It was. I'm amazed you knew that.
Yeah. Instead, it turns out to be a very important osmolite.
Osmolite.
A compound that binds to water and helps to transport it. The function is actually to keep water in the body. Nature has apparently...
Is there much more of this? Why are you going on about this for so long?
Because I'm proving things that are fallacies. Nature has apparently found a way to conserve water...
According to Professor Luft.
...that would otherwise be carried through the body. So, I mean...
Was he the Luftwaffe?
No, you... What an idiot you are, honestly. I produce a lot of these scientific surveys, and you just choose to mock and deride that which you don't understand.
The University of Berlin.
What I'm able to tell you is
that
anybody who wants a packet of pork scratchings, pork scratchings...
This message brought to you by...
No.
You can't do this, it's undue prominence.
I'm using it merely as an example. All right, we'll just call them pork scratchings, okay?
Well, or any bar snack.
So any pork scratchings, which have got salt in them, you eat them, but then you don't necessarily then go and drink a lot more to, Well, I
mean, in your case, you couldn't drink any more than you already do.
Yeah, you don't.
Doesn't matter how much pork scratchings you eat.
You don't drink a lot more just to supplement, the salt in your body or anything like that. It has no effect. In fact, you drink less.
Do you put
good
salt?
They're good for people with drink problems.
Do you put Do you put salt on your food? Extra salt?
Yes, I do.
Do you?
Yeah,
I mean,
like
when you
salt.
have fish and chips, do you put salt on?
Oh, very much so. I like salt.
Because fish and chips, actually, funnily enough, is one of the few things I actually put salt on.
Yeah, I do. I mean,
I cook with a bit of salt, but not much. But I very rarely put salt on my food.
Oh, I like salt, and I don't believe...
Don't you think that's what's the cause of you drinking so much?
No, not at all.
What is the cause of that, then?
Well, I don't drink so much anyway, so that's an idiotic statement.
Well, it's like that question, when did you stop beating your wife?
Yes, it is. I like salt on things like beef.
Beef?
Yes, and, meat.
Well, what I'm saying is you put salt on everything, right?
I do, yes. Yeah. And I put black pepper on a lot of things as well, because I find they really improve the flavour.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, for instance...
Well, you can, of course, cook things with different flavours. You know what I made today?
Yes, I saw the picture of it. Chicken korma.
I made a chicken biryani. Actually, it was a lamb biryani, sorry.
Lamb biryani,
because I had the leftover slow-cooked lamb.
Oh, yes,
which
from
was roasted.
Easter.
Which was tremendous, right?
Yeah, okay.
And I made a really, really nice sort of curried biryani with it. It was
curried biryani, yeah, very good.
Absolutely terrific.
Okay,
and you don't need to put a lot of salt in something like that because it's got lots of other flavours.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the whole idea when you're getting treated for heart troubles is to eat no salt whatsoever.
Is that right?
And then you supplement your diet by using things like basil.
Well, what do those kind of doctors say? I bet they say if you eat too much salt, then you're drinking too much water and liquid, and it can't be good for you.
No, the amount of salt that the body can consume is another one of those great scientific debates.
Yeah.
Like, is egg and bacon good for you or not? 1 minute it is, and the next minute it's not.
I would say it's okay for you once in a while. I mean, I don't think you have egg and bacon every single day.
Yeah.
At all.
Well, I don't have any eggs anyway, so I'm never going to die of egg,
poisoning.
Poisoning, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, but you also wouldn't have a bacon sandwich every day, would you?
Well, I don't put any salt on bacon sandwiches.
Well, no, that's very salty.
Yes.
It's already cured.
But I do like salt on sausages.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
See, I don't think that's good for you.
Yeah, I think that's good for you.
All right, well, we'll come back. Anyway, you eat those horrible
I like salt on
skinless
pizza, actually.
Ugh.
Yeah, I do.
Pineapple.
Yes.
Pineapple and salt pizza.
Yes, I do, yeah.
God, you are the limit.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
No.
This is Talk Sport.
Yes.
This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Lord Matthew says this. Is Porky running for the vacancy of Prime Minister? I doubt it. Porky couldn't even run for the bus. I'm not sure that technically there is a vacancy for the Prime Minister's job yet, is there?
No,
because the actual race has not kicked off, has it?
No, absolutely
because I think before anything happens, there's some local elections on May the 4th. Yeah. And basically, they can only start the countdown to the general election after that.
I don't think they can. I think in the Commons today, the motion will be moved to call a general election on June the 8th, and then you're in play.
Yeah.
You can go for it right from the start.
Well,
and in fact, I think you'll find they're duty bound to, because the minimum period really for an election, if it's called out of the blue, is 3 weeks, right?
5 weeks of campaigning would begin on Monday, May the 8th, according to what I'm looking at here. It says local elections are held in England, Wales and Scotland, plus regional mayoral votes on Thursday, May the 4th. So I don't think they can actually physically start the campaign before that.
Behind the scenes is what I mean.
I see.
Everybody will be going at it hell for leather, because, funny enough, there are some...
Well, they started yesterday, didn't they?
Yeah, they did,
I mean, you couldn't move yesterday for people crawling out of the woodwork
yes.
from various think tanks, MPs, MPs, agents.
Once again, Westminster Green was taken
ministers.
over by people who've never had a job, talking complete hot air and nonsense about going on. When I used to do the elections, when I was a new Supremo on Fleet Street,
Supremo.
Yeah, I always tried to sort of finish it off by going to the Waldorf and buying. The Waldorf, I should say.
The Waldorf,
yeah.
the Waldorf.
Waldorf
salad.
Give me a Waldorf salad.
Yeah.
And saying to the political team, we had about 6 or 7 of them, including old John, what's his name, from Sky, who's
John Craig.
John Craig, who's now on Sky. He's the deputy political editor on Sky.
Well,
he was our deputy political editor to a guy called Will Stewart at the Express. Will is now a terrifically successful correspondent east-west. He works in Moscow and the sort of Eastern Bloc, but he also works back here in London and bridges the two. And I would take them to the Waldorf for champagne breakfast.
Yes.
And in those days, it was quite rare to find somebody where you could order champagne at breakfast time.
You're talking about the one in the Aldwych.
In the Aldwych, yeah, absolutely.
Which is a Hilton now, by the way.
Is it a Hilton?
It is a Hilton now.
Is it a Hilton? Yeah, OK. Well,
it's not quite as grand as it once was.
Well, it had the Palm Bard where all those tea dances used to take place. Was it called the Palm?
Not sure.
Yeah, it was the Palm Court. Palm Court Bar.
Palm Court, yes.
And it was in the Palm Court. They used to lay out the breakfast.
Yeah.
And we got in there.
I always preferred the River Room at the Savoy, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I quite like that as well, but,
Couldn't afford that, probably.
Well, you couldn't afford it, but, I mean, the Waldorf, literally a walk away, wasn't it? You're the end of Fleet Street.
Oh, so is the Savoy.
Sorry?
So is the Savoy.
Savoy's a bit more around the
Savoy
Aldwych,
is about 3 minutes from the Waldorf.
Yeah, I suppose it is in the end. But there were a lot of people in the Savoy on that morning, and the Waldorf was just easy to get into.
I see.
So that's why we did it there.
Yes.
Now, I want to tell you something here, right?
I've got some tweets here for you. Giffgaff says this.
Yeah.
Methinks Porky doth protest far too much when commenting on dubious landlord sexual practices.
Oh, I'm not getting involved
sex
in that.
for rent.
Absolutely disgraceful. What I want to celebrate is that on this day, right, a man who will go down as legendary figure. What are you laughing at?
Because I don't know where you're going with this.
Well,
we already missed out on Einstein yesterday.
No, it's a guy called Arthur Conway.
Arthur Conway.
Right.
Don't think I know him.
Yeah. And on this day in 1950, right, this 37-year-old layabout, right, was the first man in Britain to be publicly labelled work shy.
Work shy?
Yeah, yeah.
In what year was this?
This is in 1950.
Okay.
It was a case brought by the National Assistance Board.
Right.
And to my absolute extreme joy, he was jailed for 3 months for failing to maintain himself, his wife and his 3 children.
Right.
Now, that's because he turned down a series of job vacancies which were offered to him by putting up ridiculous excuses as to why he couldn't do them.
And was this in the early days of the benefit system?
Well, it's 1950, so it was just 5 years after the end of the Second World War when the welfare state barely existed. But if it did, you had to be, terribly hard up.
Yeah.
But you were,
But that's why I'm surprised that they would have been sophisticated enough to start offering people jobs, because I didn't think that they might have had the wherewithal at that point.
Well, believe it or not, the economy mushroomed after the Second World War.
I know
because once the troops came home,
it was the height of "You've never had it so good," wasn't
that's
it?
right. Well, that
From
was
Harold Macmillan.
That was in the mid-50s, but you're absolutely right. It was on the path there. So we had to rebuild a country.
Yeah.
So there was public money about,
Yeah.
So this guy turned down 3 jobs. So they jailed him. Now, if only we would do that today.
No.
If only we would do that
absolute
today.
rubbish.
The amount of layabouts we have in this country now
it costs more money to
enormous.
put somebody in jail than it does to put them on benefits.
We'll have layabout camps then and put them in there.
Layabout camps?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, where they can, they can
You've
do
obviously
something
lost
useful.
the plot.
No, I haven't lost the plot.
You go from, shamelessly hawking your latest commercial venture to blaming people for being too incapable of working.
Yeah,
so
layabouts.
to lock them up in a camp.
There's too many layabouts.
You've gone mad.
And by the way,
shocking attitude.
Most layabouts don't want to be layabouts. Most layabouts were made layabouts by Gordon Brown.
No, that's not true.
Who decided, let's have a huge welfare state.
That's not true.
The body politic of the labour movement.
No, that's not true.
And
what Gordon Brown tried to do, albeit that he didn't do it very successfully, was to try and help people get back into work.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't.
But he didn't really. I mean, the trouble is you can't give people money for nothing then expect them to go back to work.
No, exactly. He was very happy for, Gordon Brown allowed the floodgates open, along with Tony Blair, to allow a huge pool of cheap labour to flood into this country.
That's true, yeah.
Which helped out all his mates.
They later admitted.
Yes, exactly. Which helped all his mates who needed cleaners and gardeners.
Well, they all got the vote in Scotland as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they flooded in. They took all the jobs that were the lowest paid jobs, which meant that Gordon Brown had to make sure that, so as this plan didn't get thwarted, that the British people who should have been doing those jobs, had we not had millions of people coming from abroad, had to be looked after in a position where they didn't have to work.
Well, it's a bit worse than that, actually, because what they did was they created a system whereby it wasn't economical for a lot of people to get a job.
That's
it was
exactly
better
what
for
I mean.
them to stay on the dole.
And that is worse than putting people in jail, because that basically strips a man of his dignity, strips a woman of the ability
welfare trap, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, to be independent in this society of ours. Yeah. And therefore,
I think the trouble is, though, you can't sit there and pontificate as a very well-off person, because people will take that very badly. And they'll say, "What do you know about?"
I want people to be able to work.
Yeah, but it's nothing to do with you. You know what you
it's
know
everything
about.
to do with me because I'm a taxpayer.
What you know about the difficulties of being, in finding work hard to find in different parts of the country is absolutely nothing.
No,
you know nothing about it.
Employment's at record levels.
You've never been unemployed in your life, have you?
Yes, I have. Of course, I have.
You?
When I've been between jobs,
You've claimed
resting
unemployment
and all that kind
benefit,
of
have you?
No, of course I haven't. No.
Why
would I claim that?
Well, because you're entitled to claim it.
Well, I never have. But no, what I'm going to say is that
that shows you that you've never needed it.
Working jobs in this country are at record numbers, right? There are jobs everywhere. You look down any high street in this country,
that's not true.
You will see things like
but the point is that
barman wanted, chefs
but
wanted,
the point is
receptionists wanted.
But there's an awful lot of those jobs which are uneconomical for people who are on benefits.
Well, that's why you've got to restructure the welfare state, because it's unkind and unfair to say to people you can survive without working. Working is the essence of most people's lives.
That may well be true, and as a theory,
and
it's
everybody
a very good
should
theory.
be allowed to take a job.
But by the same token, people have children that they can't leave behind at home while they go off to work, so they get help for having the kids. I mean, the next conversation you're going to tell me is people should be stopped from having children unless they can afford to bring them up.
That's utter rubbish.
Well,
of course I wouldn't say that.
Well, that's the logical conclusion of your argument.
There is a lack of dignity in somebody who has to live off other people's handouts, even if it's the state. Most people would like to work. And therefore, we have to provide jobs for those people to be able to work. And if they were born and brought up in this country, they should be entitled to think there'll be a job here for me within the society in which
What if they were born and brought up
place?
in a European Union country, which is part of what we are currently with?
Well, that's exactly what's happened. Millions of people from there have come here to work in this country, and good luck to them.
Yeah.
I have not a problem with that, because they're hard-working and they've come to seek a better life, and that's fine.
Yeah, but that's a gross generalisation.
Well, no, but we can't then say, but there's another 1.5 million or 2 million who are, people who were born and brought up in this country who can't work because the working jobs that they wanted have been taken by others. You've got to get that right.
Well,
you've got to get it sorted.
You've got to try and get it right, but people have not got it right for decades.
Well,
in fact, no politician has managed to get it right, and I suspect they will not get it right in the next Parliament either.
I'm telling you, we need a bit more growth in the economy. You expand the number of jobs, you then make sure everybody's got a job, because I think it's terribly
it's
unkind
not that simple, is it?
to condemn somebody to unemployment on a long-term basis.
I see.
It's
I think
soul-destroying.
Coming across as very heartless, I'm
No,
afraid.
I'm not coming across as heartless. I'm coming across as a great caring individual.
No, but everyone
and
knows
I want
you're not.
people to be happy.
Everyone knows you're not caring
and
at all.
have
The only
fulfilling
person you
lives.
care about is yourself.
No, that's not true. I
Adam
care about
says
others.
this. Can you wish my fiancée Nicola Poxon a happy 40th birthday on Wednesday the 19th, please? It's from Adam. He says, P.S. she's a big fan of Porky.
That's Nicola?
Nicola Poxon.
Oh, OK. Nicola Poxon, if you are listening, my dear, I want to say to you, what is it, of anniversary?
40th birthday.
Oh, 40th birthday. It's your 40th birthday. I tell you what, life starts at 40. And 40 is also a very glamorous age.
How do you remember? How can you remember that?
So I want to wish you a terrifically happy birthday and a long and fulfilling life to come.
There you are. This is Talk Sport.
Yes.
Talk Sport on DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
Freedom for sport.
Can we kick it? Yes, we can. Talk Sport.
Get up in the morning slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed. Oh, me Israelites, get up in the morning slaving for bread, sir, so that every mouth can be fed.
The Osmanites, wasn't it? The Osmondites, that's what it's all about. Now, I've got another one here for you.
Right,
This is from Carl. Please can you give a shout and a big congratulations to Mike and Laura on the birth of Evan Michael Grundy.
Oh, right,
so,
okay.
That's a new child being
and who
welcomed into
the
the world.
parents again?
Mike and Laura, I believe.
Well, Mike and Laura, congratulations on becoming parents, and I wish your Ben a very long, happy and successful life.
Evan Michael Grundy, very good indeed. Now, here's a shocker for you, right? It's on the back page of some of the papers this morning.
Right.
Jack Wilshere's broken his leg.
Yeah, I know.
Hairline fracture of his left leg.
Jack Wilshere has been dealt a crushing injury blow after suffering a suspected hairline fracture. Yeah. England midfielder was hopefully to escape serious injury after an X-ray on Sunday.
Yeah.
But it showed
he
no
was
break
taken off,
on
wasn't he, against
part.
Spurs, and there was some rather
That's
disgraceful sort of chanting going on by the Spurs fans at the time.
Yeah.
So making fun of him, the fact that he'd been carried off. And he didn't realise, apparently, that he'd broken his leg.
Accidental collision with Harry Kane during a Bournemouth loss at Tottenham. However, there was concern that the prognosis was too premature, that he only sustained the injury 24 hours earlier. Fears have been realised as he took a CT scan. And that's much more conclusive than X-rays, shows a small crack in his left leg. It's called a hairline fracture, isn't it?
Right, exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, how about this from Daniel? He says, if Porky was a bar of chocolate, he would eat himself. He blows smoke up his own backside far too much.
That's a disgusting thing to say.
Well,
you shouldn't read out things like that on a family
Mark
show.
says this, why
People
not kill
want to
two
be
birds?
smutty, it's up to them.
Well, he's not being smutty. I think he's
he's
talking about the fact that you're too fond of yourself and you think that you've got the answer to everything.
We all know
I don't
that's
think he's
rubbish.
Well, of course it's rubbish. Mark says this, why not kill two birds with one stone and make all these layabouts work in Parry's pork scratchings factory?
That's not a bad idea.
Send them all to work for you.
Absolutely. No, I mean, don't people take my point that I want people to be able to work so that they have some dignity in life and all. Yes. I'm not going over all that again.
No, I know. I don't need you to go over it again.
When old Arthur Conway
but it is not an easy
got jailed for...
It's not an easy thing to find a solution for. That's my point.
Well,
I mean, for example, Adrian says this, what's wrong with expecting people who decide to have kids to support them themselves? Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
No.
However, the problem is that if they don't do it, what are you supposed to do then?
Take the children off them?
Are you supposed to take the children off them?
Exactly.
Are you supposed to tell them that they have to live on the street? Or are you supposed to give them enough assistance to be able to raise the children in a style to which at least the kids can live?
Yeah.
You know, that's where it becomes difficult.
That is the big problem.
I mean, of course, people should support the children that they bring into the world.
Yes.
But unfortunately, not everybody does. And you can't just go, well, in that case, you can just go and live on the street.
No, remember, the reason we have a welfare state anyway is not so that people can spend the whole of their life not working.
Well, it's meant to be a safety net, isn't it?
Of course it is. And so if people have children, but then A, fall on hard times, or B, suffer serious injury, or they're unable
become disabled in some way.
to pursue their parental duties,
responsibilities,
then the state has to assist them and has to help.
Exactly.
You know, the welfare state is here to help those who cannot help themselves.
That's right.
But it's not here to help those who could help themselves if we got the structure of society right.
I mean, for example, in the United States, and you'll probably know this anyway, but not everybody will.
Yeah.
If you go on unemployment benefit, generally speaking, you can only go on it for 6 months.
That's right.
And after 6 months, it stops.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah, of course it does.
So you have to get a job.
And people,
so, I mean, that does work in America. However, what you will find as well, as you go around parts of America and various cities and certain parts of rural United States, it's very, very poor.
Yeah, of course.
And there are people living in horrendously bad conditions.
There are,
as a result of the fact that they don't get any help from the state.
Totally agree.
So, I'm not sure that's the answer either.
In every country, every developed country, the size of the black economy is massively underestimated.
Yeah.
Massively underestimated.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, is the law of the jungle.
But, I mean, one of the reasons, and you and I have discussed this in the past before,
one
of the reasons that the black economy grows in certain countries is because the tax system becomes onerous. And people decide it's too complicated and I'm going to avoid doing it.
Exactly. And then law of the jungle is what then is invoked because people who work in the black economy are usually faster on their feet and all that kind of stuff, and people get left behind.
Yes.
Now, I was going to ask you, have you ever heard of an author called David Baldacci?
David Baldacci? I don't think so.
He's one of the biggest selling authors in the world.
Is he?
He writes...
pronouncing his name right.
Baldacci. David Baldacci. Baldacci.
Yes, I think I have heard of him.
Right. Well, he is one of the most famous authors in the world.
Oh, yeah. What's he written?
Well, this is the point. When Barack Obama was in town once for a political, sort of rally, and he heard that David Baldacci was also in town, he went across town to see Baldacci and said, wow, this guy's so famous.
Wow. Well, there you go.
And Baldacci bumped into Barack Obama in a Washington, D.C. bookstore in December 2014. It was hard to tell who was the more impressed. When I saw the bomb-sniffing dogs come in, says Baldacci, I was like, hey, what's going on here? He says, then a farmer appeared with his 2 daughters doing some shopping for Christmas. He found out it was there and he stopped in the middle of the store, whirled round and said, are you Mr. Baldacci? You're very famous. I started laughing. He was arguably the most famous man in the world. Former President Bill Clinton named Baldacci's crime novel, The Simple Truth, his favourite book of the year 1999.
Is that right?
And when they eventually met at a fundraiser 4 years ago, Clinton was halfway through another Baldacci thriller. They are the biggest selling books in America.
Yeah. You're like this, right?
Yeah.
He's got a net worth of $45 million.
Well, there you go. And what's he write?
I mean, you know,
crime thrillers.
if you'd stuck to, you know, there's an awful lot of bubbly in Brazil and Rooney Tunes, maybe you'd be worth more money.
Yeah, well, you know, I had other things to do in life. You know, I'd conquered the literary world. I had to move on.
Well, you didn't exactly conquer it, did you?
Well,
I mean, Barack Obama didn't cross the street to see you.
Well,
you haven't got $45 million in the bank.
Well,
you haven't written a bestseller.
I have. There's an awful lot of bubbly in Brazil. Was on the Sunday Times bestseller
but
list.
it doesn't count as your bestseller. It counts as Alan Brazil's.
No, I wrote it.
Well, he claims it's his.
Well, it is his because it's about his life story, but he wouldn't have appeared in print.
He wrote it.
No, he didn't.
I know he
never wrote a word of it.
But it says. Well, that's a very harsh thing to say. Yeah. You never say that to his face.
No, what I mean is that...
you never wrote a word of it. You better not get back to him, you said that.
He never typed a word of it.
I see.
I was the one who put it all into words and print, and of course I sat there for hours with Al, who told me about his life.
You never actually said the sky was inky black.
Yeah, of course he did.
And the snow was as white as a tin of Dulux paint.
Of course he did, but
really?
he didn't type that. I typed that. He told me that. Those were his words. Of course they were.
Right.
I mean, for goodness sake, man, you know, think anything would appear in that book that he hadn't told me.
David Baldacci lives in Fairfax County, Virginia.
Right.
Which is where my kids grew up.
Oh, is it?
For a while,
Yeah.
Just outside of Washington, D.C.
But I can't...
you know, it is one of the most expensive counties in the entire world.
What's it called?
Fairfax County, Virginia.
Oh, yeah, Fairfax County, yeah. But what I don't quite understand is... I don't understand why we've hardly ever heard of him in this country.
Well, I don't think you've hardly ever heard of him. It's just you haven't heard of him and you haven't bought any of his books. But obviously an awful lot of people have bought his books.
Well, you haven't heard of him either.
Well, I'd heard his name.
You're quite well read, but
I've
never
read any of his books. But, I mean, there are people who buy and read those types of books who will know him incredibly well.
Right. Here's his 3 best-selling books.
Yeah.
Absolute Power.
Yeah, that became a movie, didn't
1996.
Yeah.
With Clint Eastwood.
That's right.
The Sixth Man, 2011. A suspected serial killer murdered while awaiting trial.
Yeah.
And then the most recent one, Memory Man.
Okay.
The family of troubled tech Amos Decker is wiped out by an apparently motiveless killer.
Right. Well, The Sixth Man has been made into a film as well.
Has it?
In 1997.
Who starred
starring
in that?
Marlon Wayans and Kadeem Hardison.
Never heard of them.
Well, they're both reasonably well-known actors.
Now, you're absolutely right about the Absolute Power one, okay?
Yeah.
So Baldacci, in an interview recently in a literary magazine, talks about meeting Clint Eastwood. He says, when Clint Eastwood signed on to Absolute Power, the story changed.
Yeah.
In the book, his character, who was a jewel thief, Luther Whitney, died halfway through.
Oh, yeah.
My marching orders were, you have to keep Clint alive. I've just spent 3 years of my life killing him, but he is wonderful. Making a film is a complicated thing. It's like running a political campaign.
Yes.
Clint Eastwood had complete command of the set. Everything he said was done.
And presumably he was directing it as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. He would speak quietly. There was no screaming, but everyone listened to every word he said and reacted to it.
Yes.
It wasn't out of fear. It was out of respect that had been earned over the years he'd been working in the movie business.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I mean, working with people like that must be a great thrill.
Yeah.
You know, meeting people who have achieved so much in their particular sphere.
Exactly.
Must be tremendously exciting.
Yeah.
You know, I one day would like to work with someone like that. This is Talk Sport.
The Two Mics, simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio.
How you can watch it live, that is how you can do it. If you go to the Two Mics Twitter, that's how you can...
You sure it's on the Two Mics page?
It is on the Two Mics page. I've just put it there, but it was initially launched on the Mike Graham page.
Right, okay.
Where you can find it as well.
Okay.
So it's in both places.
Okay, this is good news.
Can you find things on Facebook?
Yeah, I can. No, not on Facebook. I'm talking about, is it on the Mike Graham Twitter?
It's on the Two Mics Twitter in about 2 seconds from now.
Right, that's great. That's all I need to know.
Okay, now, let me read you a starting question while I just get this link out.
That's good. That's good.
I'm going to be saying, watch
Okay,
Ask
let's get
Porky.
going.
Yeah, this is from Verminator. He says, it's my 60th this year. Do I do a racing weekend, a golf weekend, or a European city weekend with the lads? Either way, it is mass bladderation.
Listen, enjoy your mass bladderation. I, myself, am not one who goes out in groups like that. Certainly not to a European city, because you've got to travel with the guys for 3 or 4 hours, and then you've got to stay with them for 3 or 4 days, and then you come back for 3 or 4 hours. So I'd find that quite oppressive. As for the golf weekend, if you're a golfer, that sounds great. What was the third one?
The third one was racing. Racing,
and a day out of the races is marvellous, absolutely marvellous. I'd go for the racing one, because that gives you a short, sharp burst of adrenaline and a bit of fun, but I think the weekend away in Europe, mate, that you'll fall out with people.
OK, Stephen says this. As someone who's trying to start a fitness regime, I was wondering what I need to do to have a physique like Porky.
Well, what you've got to do is you've got to start walking, because people, what they do is, usually in the sort of early weeks of the new year, they join a very expensive gym, and then they go to the gym about twice and buy a load of expensive gear, and then, run on a treadmill for about half an hour over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then they just give it up. Walking is the best thing you can do. It doesn't jar your joints. It's a nice, gentle entry into developing physical fitness, but it's very, very good for you as well mentally, because you've got time to think, and it's very good for your skin, because when you're outside walking, you get vitamin D from sunshine. I would take that up.
OK, Mark says this. Why do people paint their kitchen walls yellow?
Well, I've no idea. My kitchen walls aren't yellow. My kitchen walls are white.
Are they?
I don't know why people paint it yellow. If I was going to paint it any other colour, it would be a sort of pale blue, because the rest of my house is blue. So I cannot answer the significance of yellow, which I find is a nice colour contrasted with blue, but rather insipid on its own.
David says this. Dear Porky, what are the chances of Spurs winning the FA Cup and the league? Please don't jinx us.
Well, they've got a very good chance of winning the FA Cup. They've only got to get through a semi-final, haven't they, to get to the final?
Well, they've got to get past Chelsea.
Yeah, well, I agree, but, I mean, it's one game, that's what I'm saying. So if they can raise their game in that game, and they're easily as good as Chelsea at the moment, I think, then they've got an opportunity there. And that's for winning the league. They can still win it. They can still win the Premier League. You get the kind of feeling that Conte, the manager of Chelsea, maybe Chelsea, have got the collywobbles about them, and Spurs definitely haven't.
Oh, right, OK. How about this one from Becky, who says, if Porky is smarter than the average bear, what was Einstein smarter than?
Well, Einstein was a really bright guy, but, I mean, his intelligence and his genius was channeled into a very, very narrow focus, that focus being on inventing the atomic bomb, really. Well, I mean, the theory of relativity, which isn't largely applicable to... Well, it's not applicable to anybody in the world. It just produces a weapon of mass destruction. I would agree that atomic power is of great benefit to the world, but unfortunately that's a political football. So, you have to look at the overall contribution to the welfare of man.
Now, in terms of gerrymandering, here's one from Glenn. He says, Dear Porky, as a Brexiteer who is extremely suspicious of the establishment, I knew that one way or the other they would find a way to get a second referendum on the EU question. Would you agree that this election has nothing to do with domestic policy and is in fact the gerrymandering of the people's voice which spoke so loudly on June 23rd last year?
No, I wouldn't at all. What this is this general election is a consequence of the Brexit vote, because David Cameron, the Prime Minister, foolishly, and he has been a foolish politician, he nailed his colours to the mast of one side or the other, whereas he should have been chairman in the middle. He should have said, right, these guys want to stay in, these guys want to stay out, I'm the Prime Minister, I'll conduct the contest. He didn't. He decided to weigh in massively and heavily with the Remainers and put himself in the European camp. He got beaten, he's out, and the new Prime Minister who came in is now seeking her own majority. Perfectly legitimate.
Here's one from Kelly. Would you consider going on Question Time if asked?
Not really, to be honest, because I think the audiences are loaded in Question Time, very loaded, towards the left spectrum of...
People have said that,
of politics.
Yeah.
I also think that the people they bring onto the panel of Question Time it's an incredibly manufactured panel. It's nothing like, this guy basically thinks this way, this guy basically thinks the other. They're fanatics, and trouble with fanatics is they spend all the time studying their facts and figures, and it's hard to get your point across to them.
Right, Marcus sent this in because Marcus has asked your advice in the past.
Yeah.
He says, I took your advice, but the girl became pregnant. Should I continue to break up a family or walk away? I think the previous question was whether he should be with this woman who has a family already.
Right.
She's apparently now become pregnant.
Well, I'm sorry, mate. This sounds like a total mess to me. When you're in domestic situations like that, you've got to draw the lines very carefully. Once you start parenting more than one family, which appears to be what you have done, I'm afraid I can't advise you there because I think that is a terrible mess. Not just because it's going to cause you problems, but you're wrecking other people's lives, and that shouldn't be done.
OK, here's one from Richard. He says, I'm planning my mother's 70th birthday celebrations coming up blank. Any ideas?
Yeah, because if your mother's 70, the only thing she'll want with her on her 70th birthday, the day of, is her family around her. So you either find a very nice restaurant somewhere with an upstairs room, somewhere in the country if you live in the country, or somewhere in town if you live in a town, or if you've got a nice enough family house, and, every family house is nice if it's one family's home, I should get that, decorated and done up. When I say decorated, I mean, put a bit of bunting up and all that, and make it a special day for your mum at home with her family, with all her family there.
Maxwell says this.
Planning.
Dear Porky, I'm running a successful small business at the moment and feel I'm ready to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
But with little experience in business, having only run this one, I'm slightly nervous about taking the risk. I'm only 24 and started this myself 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I keep telling myself to just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? Do you advise I just give it my all and make it happen, as I know deep down this could definitely grow exponentially and become a rather large and successful business?
Well, I very much admire your industry and your initiative in running your own business at 24. That's great. But what I would say is if you've clearly got doubt about expanding, now there's two ways you're looking at that. Either you're being timid or you could be rushing into something that's foolish. Please do examine all the options and use common sense. I've been involved in businesses where people have told me it's going to be a success. But when you sit down and just don't listen to anybody else and look at the figures, do the figures add up? Will they add up? Can you make it work? That's the only thing that you can go forward on. That's the evidence that you have to use to decide yes or no. You're only 24, you've got plenty of time, you don't need to rush into anything.
Lyle says this, if you could be one James Bond, who would you be and why? And which Bond are you most similar to?
Well, I liked Roger Moore as James Bond because I thought he both brought, really stylish presence to the role with a modicum of humour. He didn't overdo it, and I liked it. So I also liked him because he's the last James Bond, really. And I love the fact that he was Commander Bond and that he was often getting on and off Royal Navy submarines and that sort of thing. And that, to me, is, that's very representative of our country. So my answer is Roger Moore.
Ross says, Dear Porky, I want to take my wife away on her first holiday abroad. Where should I take her? Says Ross from Exeter.
Well, that's a very wide-ranging question, that, Ross, because I don't know what the likes of your wife are. She might love the Mediterranean, or she might love the Loire Valley in France, or she might love, going to Florida for a holiday. It's, what everything Florida brings, or Disneyland. I don't know. All I would say is this. Sometimes surprise holidays can backfire on you because your wife might hate it. My sister was once taken to Las Vegas and hated it because it's noisy and brash and all that kind of stuff. So I would actually come clean about it and let your wife choose where you go on holiday.
OK. How about this one from George? Who will be employed in August, Corbyn or Redknapp?
Corbyn or Redknapp? Well, Redknapp should be employed in August because wherever he goes, he'll do a good job, and that club needs pulling back together again. Corbyn, according to all the experts, can't survive. He's apparently going to get trounced in the forthcoming election on June the 8th. I would assume then after that, Labour Party will rebuild itself and hope that they can, put something into place for the next 5 years.
One from Johnny says, have you ever done a radio show with even mild bladderation influence?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yes, of course we have.
You're happy to admit to that. What do you mean we? We haven't, I haven't.
Oh, yeah, I have to admit to it.
Right. There is audio evidence, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has happened. You get situations working abroad where you might be working very late at night, seriously, and then the next morning have to come on very early. And the night before you've been involved, you might have been a late football match celebrating late. I remember after England played Germany in Munich, Alvin Martin and I sat there celebrating until 6 in the morning, and I was unaware that I was going to be called back onto the radio at 7:30. So,
Yes.
I was, and I had to do an hour in the studio upstairs in the hotel.
How did that go?
It was very hard.
Yeah.
You had to concentrate on it quite intensely. But that's the nature of radio on Talk Sport. We're not quite as formal as organisations like the BBC, so we try to sort of be of the people.
Michael says this, Dear Porky, is it possible to love two women at the same time, or is this simply lust?
No, I think it probably is. I mean, most people have difficulty concentrating on loving one woman at a time, I suppose, in the sense that that might lead to families and and relationships and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I can't see any reason why you couldn't be in love with more than one woman at the same time. But when you are, you have to eventually get a sense of priority as to which one of the ladies in question you love most.
Anthony says, what's the best way to remove beer and food stains from a cheap cotton shirt?
Wash it, I suppose. I mean, everything that you spill on yourself in a restaurant or a bar or something like that can usually be removed by washing. And if not, throw the shirt out.
Throw the shirt away, OK. Here's one from Simon. He says, there are apparently 20 stone wild boar rampaging around the New Forest.
Yes.
Would it be a good idea to try spear hunting them?
No, because they're very vicious, actually. They move very fast, they're heavy, and they can gore you with their horns.
Yes.
What I would advise is don't go anywhere near packs of wild boar in the New Forest. Go somewhere else.
OK. Hey Porky, says Mark, this is the final one. Do you think the British public have had enough of politicians, politics and elections for 1 year?
Well, there have been an awful lot of it, haven't there? We had the referendum, we got the May elections, May the 4th, and we got the general election, June the 8th. I think we're all a bit sort of election weary, but it's a process that has to be gone through in a democratic society, so I'm afraid you just got to stick with it.
Yeah, you can't have too many elections, in my view. This is Talk Sport. That was Ask Porky.
Yes.
The Two Mics, simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio.
Today you and I are not the same. You say you like the sun, I like the rain. So before we go, do it all again. You better catch your own train.
A couple of people are responding to your conversation earlier about that American author.
Yeah.
Tracy says that she had read the book before she saw the film Absolute Power.
Right.
She said Gene Hackman was fantastic in the film.
Right.
But she said she was a bit miffed that they'd altered the book for the purposes of the film.
Yes.
Because I suppose that's always the trouble when you read a book and you really like it.
I suppose.
And then you see a movie and it kind of ruins it sometimes because you've got this idea in your head of who the characters are and what they look like.
Yes,
and suddenly when you see somebody playing somebody, it doesn't quite work, does it?
No,
Have you ever had that?
I totally understand what you're saying. There's one here. It says the problem with Porky is that he comes across as someone who always believes in the stick above the carrot.
That's true.
No, I don't. I don't at all. I love to give people incentives in life to get on with them life and make a better life for themselves, okay?
All right.
Yeah.
Lord Matthew says, Porky mixed with Kim Jong-un is a disturbing thought. And Michael, who's the guy that asked the question about whether it's possible to love two women, said, excellent advice, thank you. I'm very bad at making decisions.
Okay.
Does that suggest, Michael, that you're going to choose between one and the other?
Well, who knows?
You'll have to let us know.
You'll have to let us know, please, if you could. Yeah, Phil here says, Porky, spot on. If people can work and they don't want to, their money should be stopped. But I didn't say that quite so bluntly. What I said was give people incentives to go back to work because work is dignified and being somebody who gets up in the morning and has nothing to do is horrendous and something that nobody should be asked to have to endure.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people do get incentives to go back to work, but unfortunately the kind of jobs that they might be qualified to do are not well enough paid to get them off the situation that they're in, and that is part of the problem, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Luke says, could he get a shout-out for, it's his birthday, I think it was his birthday yesterday, actually,
right.
Judging by this.
Right.
So you say happy birthday, Luke.
Happy birthday, Luke. Hope you have a long and prosperous life.
And here's a good one from somebody called J. Luke, who's different Luke. He says, I love that Porky never listens to you. He's just waiting for you to finish so he can talk. And he says, I bet you £5 he interrupts this tweet. Well, you would have lost the money.
Yeah, exactly.
He interrupts it.
Irradiated or irradiated cola.
Yes.
Good bit by Porky about salt. I suddenly have a hankering for some peanuts and pint.
I read this out earlier.
Did you?
I did.
Is that the one when I said no, eat pork scratchings instead?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, I'm just going back on the Facebook page because, in fact, you can rewatch, if you wish, the Ask Porky section, which we did, in fact, film.
Right. Are you going to send me a link that I can put out to
it's on Twitter.
Followers?
I can send it to you as well.
Yes, please.
But it seems to be, it's in a couple of places.
Yes,
so
that's good. And then I can push it out when I get home and say, look, excuse me, have a look at this.
Yes,
It'll make you more knowledgeable of life.
It will.
Yes.
Absolutely right. I'm just trying to find some of the original comments, and here's one from Johnny, who says, can you give a shout-out to my dad, David Levers, who's a trucker who works all hours God sends, and a fellow Two Mics fan just like me.
Okay.
And he says, is there any chance of doing a Two Mics live show in Nottingham?
Not immediately. We've got to make a few plans, really, for the future, but we're involved in things at the moment which are taking up a bit of time overseas.
Yes.
What's that chap's name? David Lever?
His dad's name is David Levers, yeah.
David Lever. David, may I say a very happy birthday to you. Thanks for listening whilst you're on the highways and byways. You are a king of the road.
Phil says, Porky didn't curse Corbyn. Does this mean he rocks up as PM?
No, not at all.
Very possibly.
Not at all. In fact, somebody was asking me just a few minutes ago what's going to happen in the election. And I think, you pointed out that the pollsters have been so massively off the mark in the last two elections in this country. Who knows?
Funnily enough, I was listening to one of the pollsters yesterday being interviewed by Julie Hartley-Brewer, who did a fantastic job, by the way, when the news broke yesterday.
That's right.
So I was listening to her. And the pollsters are continually defending themselves.
I know.
It goes, well, we weren't actually that far out. People took some of the information and misconstrued it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They don't actually admit that they got it wrong.
No.
When they did get it wrong, they even got it wrong, so much so that on the night of the election, you'll remember, was it Paddy Ashdown? Was it the night of the referendum? Who said that if it was a no, he'd eat his hat. He'd eat his hat. Or was that I can't remember if that was the election itself.
That was the election itself. When the first exit poll came out and showed...
and it was Paddy Ashdown and Alistair Campbell was sitting in the studio.
That's right, and announced Cameron had 180 seats already and therefore was going to even get a majority, which nobody had...
nobody thought he'd get a majority at all.
The two reactions were, first of all... Paddy Ashdown said, if that's correct, I'll eat my hat. And the second one was that Ed Miliband, who was writing his victory speech, was told by his chief political advisor, it's wrong. Keep writing. Don't stop writing your speech. You'll need it in an hour or two.
And it took a couple of hours before they all realised they'd got it completely wrong.
Completely wrong,
And Paddy Ashdown didn't actually eat his hat, unfortunately, which we would have all liked to have seen.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
That would have been good. Now, Rodney's got a good point here. He says, let me get this right. Porky wants to put lazy people in prison and criminals in school.
No.
What dimension does he live in?
No, I don't. I don't want to put lazy people in prison. I want lazy people to get incentives to find the value of work. Because if we all worked contentedly, we'd have a better society. And I don't want to put prisoners in school. I just think that if somebody is locked up for 3 or 4 years and they come out as useless a member of society as they were when they went in, there's not much point in that incarceration.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But of course, once again, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Of course it is.
Because in the end, it does cost money to educate people.
Yes.
And they have tried these programmes where they release people into halfway houses, and then people see that as a licence to go out and commit more crime.
Sure.
And unfortunately, bad people tend to be recidivists.
I agree with all of that.
And I mean, I guess there might be some kids who would benefit from a bit of arm around their shoulder and, a bit of, genuine love and affection and all that. But unfortunately, if I always take the view, if you're able, because you don't seem to have any moral compass, to hit an old lady over the head or rape somebody, I don't think you're ever going to be rehabilitated.
No, I don't either.
So I don't think anybody should bother trying.
I don't, but actually, the majority of our criminals who go into prison are not serious criminals. That's why newspaper headlines are made for really nasty people, murderers, rapists, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, you say they're not serious, but there's plenty of bad people in prison.
There's plenty of bad people in prison, and don't get me wrong, I'm not...
they're not all sort of hapless victims of a miscarriage of justice.
No, of course they're not. But a guy who has, been done for nicking 6 or 7 cars or something like that, you see what I mean, is a blinking nuisance to society.
Well, he is. I don't nicking my car, do you?
No.
Or yours.
No, I don't. But when he comes out, I don't want him to still be nicking cars. I want him to...
That's the only thing he knows how to do.
No, unless inside jail they teach him how to be an upholsterer,
an upholsterer is a terrible job.
Well, teach them something. Teach them to be a
chairs.
No, because then he'd become a more useful member of society. I mean, clearly you don't get the whole
I do get
strategy
it,
of trying to employ people.
No, but this is why people like you
energy
have a soapbox, but nothing else, because you don't actually know how to make it work. All you've got is a load of ideas which don't work, and that's not an idea.
Well, you can't make it work if you don't work within that system. What I'm saying is the system itself is there and should be improved,
really?
Okay? Quite as simple
And while
as
he's training to be an upholsterer, which has no guarantee of any kind of income whatsoever, you propose to feed him with public money, I presume.
Well, you have to, because prisoners get fed with public money anyway, whether they're being taught something or not taught something, you know?
Marcus says this: I love how Porky told me to go after her, and now he's telling me to bail. I can't run away now.
Yeah?
This is the guy who's got the woman pregnant.
Well, I'm sorry, but you got yourself into a bit of a mess there, mate.
He took your advice.
And you will wake up one day and think, how did I get myself into another fine mess I got myself into? Yeah, well, you've got to have a more responsible attitude towards life, I'm afraid.
He might be coming after you for some child support.
Well, you won't get it from me. You get it from the state, and as I'm a taxpayer...
Oh, so you're happy for all that to happen? Yeah. Isn't Marcus the guy that lives in Barbados?
Is he?
Yeah, he is. He's the guy that you don't even remember anybody's name.
Well, why
Marcus
should I?
Is the guy. Well, why should you? Because we do a radio show and we have a lot of very regular correspondence, right?
Okay.
And Marcus in Barbados is, if you remember rightly, not only the guy who asked for advice about being in love with a woman who was already attached, but he also asked for advice on the eve of the big storm that was coming to Barbados, and you told him he should go to work.
Yes, that's right, I did.
And unfortunately, half the island was then devastated by this storm.
Yes, but he survived, didn't he?
Well, he did.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
but it wasn't the best piece of advice you'd ever had. So I'm surprised. That's why I'm surprised you don't remember his name.
Well, we have many very valuable correspondents, and I couldn't possibly remember all their names because we do have literally. Oh, there's that word again. Millions of listeners.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus said earlier, he said, the problem is I live in Barbados, so when you guys are on, I'm always preparing for or heading to work.
Oh, I see.
I miss 1 hour each time.
I see, okay.
Which is unfortunate. Well, listen to the podcast, Marcus. You know how to do that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So you should, definitely.
Absolutely right. And we might have some more podcast news coming, actually, soon.
We might have some more podcast news coming. Listen, did you know that they are going to build a new version of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon?
What?
In Birmingham.
The Hanging Gardens of Birmingham?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Birmingham could soon get its own version of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Why don't they just make sure that they can get the roads working properly? Last time I was in Birmingham, the traffic was so appalling.
It was so bad around our hotel,
the last thing they need is more Hanging Gardens of Birmingham.
Yeah, plans were submitted for a pair of soaring tree-covered towers, the first of its kind in Britain, a new scheme intended for Digbeth. Right, Digbeth, great area of Birmingham.
Why? And who's paying for this then?
Well, it'd be private company.
Are you sure it's not the taxpayer?
Right, this is two 25-storey towers with planted terraces.
Why?
Allowing each of the 500 residents access to green space on their level.
Well, why though?
Well, because we should have these things, because it's great.
No, it's not great. It's a waste of money.
And it's funded with £70 million from a Chinese private equity company.
I don't care.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Are people going to live in this building?
Yeah, of course they are.
So they're going to live on balconies that have got loads of ivy hanging
Yes, that's
down.
right, yeah. And grass and lawns and all sorts of things. The Hanging Gardens of Birmingham. Have you been to the Hanging Gardens of Babylon?
No.
No, I haven't either.
I didn't know they actually existed.
They're
Hanging Gardens.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, where do they hang?
Babylon.
Yeah, but how do they hang, if you know what I mean?
Presumably the same way that they're going to be recreated by the Birmingham people.
I suppose so, yeah.
I thought they were a bit mythical, like the Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah.
It was there once, but it's not there anymore.
When Basil Fawlty said, what do you expect to see, madam, from your outer room?
Herds of wildebeest.
Wildebeest, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they must exist somewhere.
Well, I think they did exist, but I don't think they do anymore.
I've never seen a picture of them, that's the point.
Well, I don't think anybody took photographs in those days. Have you ever seen a picture of the Colossus of Rhodes?
No.
Do you know where it was?
In Rhodes, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was supposed to straddle across the harbour.
Yes,
the
that's
entrance
right.
to the harbour at Rhodes. But it's not there anymore because it's a ruin.
Yeah.
But nobody knows what happened to it.
No, exactly.
But there are no pictures of that either.
No, I couldn't care less.
Thanks, great. Thanks for telling us. This is Talk Sport.
Don't forget to come back tomorrow for another sparkling, as fizzy as a bottle of champagne, podcast from the two mics.
You were the one that was saying that, people who go to prison should be somehow taught to do a job.
Well, I think they should. I believe in the old adage of don't give a man a fish, teach him how to fish, and then he can look after himself. So if you send a bloke to jail, and all you do is lock him up 23 hours a day, and all he does is spend his time spaced out on homemade hooch in the jail and
marijuana
and the zombie drug, which is now quite legal outside of jail.
Drug?
What's it called?
What's
Spice?
That? Spice?
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know about that.
It is, yeah. If
you're an expert in the zombie drug now.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
They're selling a lot of it down in Gosport, are they?
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
In that funny pub across where you live from.
No, nothing funny about that at all.
Yeah, it looks a bit of a zombie sort of hangout.
No, it doesn't. How dare you be so personally
It's horrible
abusive.
down there.
It's not horrible down there.
It is horrible.
At all. It's not.
It's disgusting.
Got one of the best women's darts teams in the country. What's the problem with that?
That's great.
On DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM.
The pressure's on now.
Relieve the itch. Talk Sport.
So anyway, it turns out to be a very important osmolyte.
Right.
A compound that binds to
used
water.
to like them.
Yeah.
The osmolytes.
The
osmolytes.
Israelites. That was Desmond Decker.